After all the rumors, guesswork, predictions, hypotheticals of wondering who the 76ers will land in free agency, well, we don't have an answer yet, but we are finally at a place where we start to have some answers beginning around 6 p.m. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers Free Agency Show here, the Frenzy on a Sunday, presented by our great friends from Rothman Orthopedics, along with Derek Bodner, Kyle Neubeck. I'm Devon Givens, producer extraordinaire. Brianna is here as always, and we appreciate you spending your Sunday evening with us as we bring you the up-to-date happenings around the 76ers in the moment, and of course, around the NBA. Things are already starting to trickle out. How true are they?
Including in our studio?
No, I'm just kidding. No doubt about that. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But we are thrilled to be here for weeks now since the season ended. And even before then, we were having these conversations of what the team is going to do. What is it going to look like? Who are they going to sign? Paul George just a week ago, could he be changing his mind and opting in? Well, we got the answer on Saturday that he was opting out. We did an emergency podcast with that one on Saturday. And here we are today where things are really starting to trickle out there about the possibility of Daryl Morey landing the big fish. So we talk about Paul George, some trade possibilities, 76ers free agents, who will be coming back potentially here to this basketball team. Kyle, it's going to be a busy, busy day with us hanging with the folks.
And I said to you before the show, Devon and Derek, that maybe there's just something that a higher power knows out there. Something good might happen to Philadelphia. So a raging thunderstorm came through to take us all out before something nice can happen for the good people of Philadelphia.
Like, legitimately, you could not see across the block.
It was so sheet rain. Yes. It was that type of rain that if you're driving in it, you almost want to just stop your car. But
so if you did stop your car and you're sitting on the side of the road,
pull up the show,
just
baby.
Pull the show up and sit back and relax for a bit until things clear up.
So I would say, and I mean, we did our quick emergency show yesterday, and all of us began leaning this way. I think the writing is on the wall at this point. I am reasonably confident the Sixers are going to get Paul George. All the word out of LA is that they don't seem to be budging on their long-held belief or position, I should say, that they're not going to exceed Kawhi Leonard's dollar amount or years. And, combining some of the reporting from the people we trust out there. So Jake Fisher, friend of the show today, wrote a story heading into free agency alluding to the fact that the Clippers it's not even necessarily all about Paul George specifically and concerns with Paul George specifically. It's getting to this place where that second apron of impact is real. And thinking about all the roster building mechanisms that will be taken away from them and being locked into this group that is, frankly, a bunch of guys in their mid-30s that are going into their late 30s, and staring that down and basically saying, we can't and won't go higher than this. It's not about Steve Ballmer's money. It's not about anything more than the pure basketball team construction argument. And so if that's to be believed, if that is true, I just find it really difficult to believe that right now, in the next hour, whenever it might be, that Lawrence Frank, Steve Ballmer, Ty Lue, any of the big power players, decision makers in LA are suddenly just going to pivot and say, screw it, we're going to give this guy all this money. And you can certainly criticize them for only realizing in the last few months that all these guys they built their team around are in their mid-30s and not on the upswing anymore. But they've had their time, right? Like if there was urgency to keep him and keep running it back with these guys and with Paul George, the time to send the message to offer him the contract, Derek said this before the show, was over the last few days when this became clear. Like, you're talking to Golden State about a opt-in and trade scenario, that those talks seem like they were pretty advanced for a thing that now we know is not going to happen. And it just hasn't happened. The Sixers right now are prepared to step up, give him the years, give him the money. And I think at the end of the day, that is going to speak the loudest. And it sure looks like we're headed toward Paul George as the third star in Philadelphia.
Yeah, look, right up until Thursday's NBA draft, I was sort of tempering. There was a lot of, well, if the Clippers haven't offered him the contract yet, why would they change their course? And I was tempering that a little bit with, well, they could be waiting to see, maybe the Sixers panic. Maybe the Sixers don't want to sit around and wait on the whims of Paul George. Maybe the Clippers are sitting around waiting, going, well, maybe the Sixers will pounce on Brandon Ingram trade at the draft. If the Sixers do that, all of a sudden there's one fewer team that could sign him. We don't really think he wants to go to Orlando. All of a sudden, we have more leverage to get him on the contract that we want. And I think that was fair to keep that option open. But once the Sixers didn't act Wednesday and Thursday at the draft, it was obvious they were going to go into free agency with their cap space. It's been known for months, literally months, across the league that Daryl Morey would offer Paul George a 4-year contract. So at that point, there was no reason to wait and see. There was nothing to be gained by stringing this out. So the course that they took from Thursday on was to try to find a trade with Golden State. That tells you they do not want to offer a 4-year contract. Now, the only thing that I would, and I wrote about this earlier today, but the only thing I would caution against is when you get, like, it's one thing to say, I'm prepared to let Paul George walk. When you get to the reality of it and you say, oh crap, he's actually going to walk, you might change your opinion. You might change your valuation. It's a low percentage chance. It might be a 10% chance, but there's a chance that they cave. I don't think it's a high chance. So if they don't cave, Paul George is left with, well, I can go 3 years, 150 in LA, because it's clear he wants to stay in LA. It's his hometown. It's where he wants to live. But if it's 3,150 there and 4,212 here,
that's not an insignificant difference.
$60 million can buy you a lot of real estate on both coasts. So I think the Sixers have a really, really good shot. I think what I said earlier today was like 55, 60%. I'm leaving a little bit for LA to change their tune, a tiny bit for Paul George to take the 3-year deal, tiny percent chance. Never zero, but it's tiny. And a small chance to for Orlando to be the favorite, and frankly, probably 10 or 15% of just like good things don't happen to us, so I'm baking that in there as well. But I think it's a really strong case right now.
All right, so we're already starting to hear things out there where we've seen different reports from Chris Haynes from TNT, and of course, the things that he does out there for Bleacher Report. We've seen some things from Mark Stein already, and a few things that we talked about when we walked in. Of course, I see some of you have seen the exact same things that we have landing on social media. Chris Haynes, the one that you told me about, Kyle, seeing that there's growing optimism the Philadelphia 76ers will land Paul George in free agency. He then followed it up a little bit later where we were able to watch some video on that where things seem to be, at least for the Clippers on that side, we're starting to really fade away from him. He was talking a lot more about that. And Mark Stein also talked about another part that we'll get into with another free agent and teaming up. But hearing it out there now, of course, that we've talked about. And of course, guys, for me personally, I want to give credit to my guys talking about this all the way back in during the basketball season when it was happened, once the calendar year turned, things that they were hearing.
I will say we were pretty far ahead of the
pretty
Paul
early
George
on this
story.
Yeah. So
with
that's why I
the negotiations.
Allow me to say it. You don't have to say it because you guys were
I'll
on this.
pat Derek and you on the back.
I will say though, like when it first came out, we were like, no chance. Like that's a long shot.
Yeah,
but it was a good discussion.
Yeah, but like to be here, and I think the only reason I'm really bringing that up is because there's a lot of people who I think are still like, oh, I don't like it, blah blah blah. And look, I get it. There are concerns, but I do also think this is a pretty high end outcome when you came into the season with cap space. Like you weren't going to get a perfect player. That perfect player isn't really out there. We can debate Brandon Ingram. We can debate. I mean, OG didn't even leave, so there's really not much of a debate there. Of the players who will change teams, this is the highest realistic outcome.
All right. So with all of that, seeing these other reports start to come out. Yesterday, we saw the report while we were doing our emergency podcast about the news of him opting out, Paul George. Shams had pointed out that it's going to take a while, potentially. He's going to go into the evening Pacific Coast time to start the meetings with the Los Angeles Clippers, Philadelphia 76ers, and the Orlando Magic. But right before we came in, getting this news, Kyle, what do you make of that? From breaking news yourself and understanding, speaking to people around the league, what do you make of that coming out right now, the way that it is and the way that they're putting it out way before it's evening time in the Pacific Coast?
I mean, I would say this. If you're Paul George and Paul George's representation, I believe his agent is Aaron Mintz, I think a lot of it is like they're giving one last cattle prod to Lawrence Frank and Steve Ballmer and saying it's nut up or shut up time, right? Like this is either you come with the years, you come with the money, or I'm taking my ass elsewhere. Like I don't think he could send a clearer signal right now. To your point, Chris Haynes was on NBA TV within the last, I want to say, hour or two.
Sure.
And he said that it would be a Hail Mary for the Clippers at this point, which, again, that aligns with everything that we're hearing, which is that they're not moving. They are saying that 3 years, 150 to 155, 153, whatever that is for Kawhi, no further. And look, I'm not sitting here saying that's wrong, right? We're going to get into some discussions about Paul George now and Paul George potentially 3-4 years down the road here, and what the ramifications will be there. But as it relates to will the Clippers keep him, they don't appear to be doing what it's going to take to keep Paul George. And that's why you're seeing stuff out there, for example, like his wife following Joel's wife on Instagram and all the speculation that comes with that.
That
We are
always
like
works,
so
man.
deep
I'll
in
tell
the
you what.
weeds
That always
on.
works.
Look, Burnergate was great, but it has turned every Sixers fan into an internet sleuth.
Now listen, I am a firm believer in the happy wife, happy life paradigm. And so there are a lot of things that are speculation, or I hear from people yesterday, Friday, whatever it is about, you hear people who are like, I think Paul George is for sure going there. Then you hear some people are more skeptical. Hey, I think Golden State is in pole position, all that. When I see the wives following each other back on Instagram, that is the canary in the coal mine. That is this might really be happening
By
type
the way,
of moment.
happy wife, happy life is definitely a lesson that Brian Colangelo could have tried to learn.
I said
He's
it at
still
the time.
backing that up.
How do you go through the Burner scandal and basically that's the end of your legitimate NBA career? You
And you're
lose
trying to
that,
save
and
it,
then
yeah.
you throw your wife under the bus on time. It's whatever. But yeah, I just look. Everything is pointing to where I think the Sixers are hoping it goes. That does not mean it's locked in. And I will say, I said this in our Discord this week, that Paul George is maybe the most millennial player in the millennial star in the NBA. He takes a while to make his decisions. He can succumb to peer pressure, and he has a podcast. I can say this because I am a millennial, and I'm all those things, by the way. This is not, I'm not picking on anybody. So I would not be completely stunned if there's a reversal here, if we end up in a situation where the Clippers just say, hey, we'll give you a little bit more. Maybe it's just the fourth year. Maybe they just go a little higher on the number, whatever it might be. But
Yeah.
It's looking pretty good.
I want to
It's
bring up
looking
one
pretty
thing
good.
from Randy Rubard. He was asking, do we think that the Clippers would really let him walk for nothing? Yeah, because a big part of their problem right now is a second apron and restrictions and adding salary. If you construct the sign and trade, you're taking back salary. It doesn't solve the core problem. The core problem isn't so much Paul George. It is that they are being locked. Now, look, you could take back a player with 1 year left. Part of their sticking point is long-term being up against the second apron. But I don't think they want to take like just salary filler to put them up near the second apron threshold for a player that they probably don't want in the salary filler just to quote unquote get something. The days of getting something back in return for a player in a sign and trade are a lot more complicated under his collective bargaining agreement. And I think there are some people who have probably heard me talk about new CBA and apron and second apron so many times. They're sick of hearing it and they're tuning it out. It's really, really important. And what we're seeing right now is the Sixers benefiting from that change and benefiting from those restrictions. The Sixers are going to be right up against it in future years too. We're going to be talking about like, oh man, how do they keep a roster under these aprons, under these thresholds? It is going to come back. The consequences of pursuing Paul George are going to be there eventually, but right now they are benefiting it. But the overall takeaway is league-wide. That is a massive deal. It's going to be a massive deal from here on out. It was a huge fundamental change to the collective bargaining agreement and the closest the NBA has ever gotten to having a true, hard cap.
And I think you guys can both speak to this as well. From what I can tell, both talking to people and just kind of observing how teams are maneuvering, it's being treated as if it is a hard cap. Like teams are absolutely, I don't want to say scrambling, but they are moving contracts and planning their future contracts as if this is a hard stop. We cannot go over this line. And for good reason, for all these different mechanisms that get taken away from you in the draft, through free agency, the buyout market. There are all kinds of problems.
And that really is a difference. Like in the past, yeah, you would get hit with a luxury tax. You would get hit with repeater taxes. Well, first of all, those are more punitive now. But more importantly, it just hits you with so many team building and roster move restrictions. Like it becomes almost impossible to flesh out a team around them. It is real. It is very, very real.
All right. Well, we have a lot to talk about Paul George and many other free agents that are potentially making their way around from different teams to another team to a new team, maybe even to Philadelphia. We'll get to that on the other side. But as mentioned at the top, this free agency show is brought to you by our good friends from Rothman Orthopedics. Look, we're on camera here, and I actually have shorts on today, folks. So if you zoomed in, you can see the scar right there on my knee. I don't even.
No. Luckily, we only do 1080p on this stream, which I'm very thankful for.
Scar right here on my knee from my ACL surgery in 2019. Not going to show the Achilles because I have socks on. But right now, just telling you about that because that's where I went. I went to Rothman Orthopedics to have my procedures done on my knee and my ankle. As my injuries happened from, you guessed it, playing basketball. So with it, I was in some really good care, though, with the great people, the great doctors, Dr. Emper, my surgeon for my Achilles, also just taking care of me and treating me very well. Not just the doctors, but everybody from the nurses to the assistants. Everybody that was there was great, and they specialized and so much for over 50 years. High quality, compassionate, and affordable care rooted in research. Also, hip, knee, spine, you name it. They have a team for each body part to make sure you're good right in your background so you can cross over the defense once again, drain those jump shots like you used to before that specific injury. Rothman's 200-plus fellowship-trained physicians subspecialize in specific areas of the body and a multitude of orthopedic services, including, as mentioned, the hip, knee, spine, shoulder, elbow, foot, and ankle. So if you're having any problems with any of those, check out the great people from Rothman. Proudly serve dozens of communities across Pennsylvania and New Jersey with 30-plus convenient offices, urgent cares, and walk-in centers as well. And when you talk about Rothman, year over year, consistently performing among the highest volume of hip, knee, shoulder, and ankle replacements in the country. That's over 60,000. You can include me in that because of me always injuring myself in this case. So for more than 50 years, Rothman has participated in 1,000 of groundbreaking research and clinical trials with the goal of advancing knowledge, developing treatments, and improving outcomes for the benefit of the patients. Rothman Orthopedics specialize in orthopedics, and you and me visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY to learn more and make an appointment today.
We were talking just a couple minutes ago about happy wife, happy life. Kyle, do you know what percentage of divorces cite snoring as a major factor?
50%.
50%. So we want to tell you about Sleep Healthy PA. At Sleep Healthy PA, they are committed to helping Philadelphia residents stop the snore and find solutions for sleep apnea that will allow you to rest well and improve your health. What causes sleep apnea? There is a choke point in the throat that causes snoring. Dr. Andrew Cohen, board certified in dental sleep medicine, and his staff will work one-on-one with you to provide first-class care that will meet your needs. Many physicians aren't equipped to provide options outside of CPAP machines. More than anything, he just wants to see his patients healthy. Tired of CPAP machines that are cumbersome? Is your significant other tired of it too? Based in Jenkintown, he's worked for years to educate dentists across the country on his personal approach to helping those with sleep apnea. His team is committed to stopping the snore. Tell him PHLY sent you and receive 15% off your initial workup. Here's a quick rundown of what that process would look like. There's a 2-hour initial exam, which is split into 2 sessions. One for information gathering, including medical history and imaging. The other to review results and share recommendations. If you're experiencing sleep apnea and are looking for a custom solution to stop the snore, reach out to Dr. Andrew Cohen at sleephealthypa.com or call 215-337-2501. Tell him PHLY sent you.
DC Marley says it should be happy spouse, happy house. You know what? That's right. Representation for the fellas too.
If I had known that rhyme off the top of my head, I would have gone with that. That's a fair point.
I haven't heard that one before. So we're an inclusive show though. So I think happy spouse, happy house is a good sentiment.
I was honestly thinking about that beforehand, like thinking something that rhymed with partner. I couldn't come up with it. So spouse works.
Well, that's why we're not poets. And
not everyone's married. So the spouse isn't perfect, but it's better than wife. I agree.
That's good. Well, Joel seems to be having a pretty good time right now. He's newly married. Getting ready for the Olympics with Team USA, and on social media, we here locally know that he's watching soccer because that's what he does. He likes to tweet about it. But some of maybe the national people don't know it. So
his
when
ability
he
to bring that up every time we're on like the precipice of something important is
Here's the thing.
elite.
I think it could just be both, right? Like he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing,
Yes.
tweeting about that stuff. He was also tweeting about F1 in the morning.
But we lean right into, that's soccer because we've seen it now for years. And that's when we start to get people tweeting about it, talking about it on television. So let's get to the other part, Kyle, that we talked about a little bit earlier with the Mark Stein piece, where he also said, not just with Paul George, but that the Philadelphia 76ers were trying to work out some gymnastics with the cap to not only try to lure in Paul George, but bring a partner with him from Denver by the name of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope.
There's some real gymnastics there.
That is some gymnastics.
That's a workout.
Yeah, that really is. So, I mean, again, going all in, trying to make sure that they put this team together, New York getting better, Boston winning championship. If they're trying to do that, man, and they were able to land those, that would be some really good work by Daryl Morey.
Yeah, so I mean, Derek will be able to speak to the actual reality of trying to do that, I think, because he has a much firmer grasp on the math than I do. I don't pretend to be as smart as he is on that front, but here's what I would say. The Sixers are doing whatever they can. Some of this will just be planning. It'll be academic, where it's things that don't come to fruition. But they have been putting in lots of work from Daryl Morey down through other people within the front office to see what are all the possibilities. And, some of them are less realistic, right? Like I think KCP is more of a reality in a situation where you lose out on Paul George, right? Like that's a guy that is one of your big money guys in the event that you're not committing $49-50 million a year to Paul George, because the reason KCP would be leaving Denver in the first place is to chase a bigger check, right? Like he wants to win and he cares about all that kind of stuff, but he was making $15 million a year in Denver. And so he wants to make 20, 22, maybe $25 million a year, depending on the length of the contract he's going to get. So Derek can tell you, what's the realistic path, or I guess not realistic, what the path would actually be to getting him. If they were able to pull that off, though, I mean, what an incredible get that would be to get Paul George to beef up your wing shooting, your defense, the connectivity between the various pieces. And then to get a guy in KCP who has proven he can be that perfect, like 4th, 5th starter, 3-and-D type guy, good being off the ball, good cutter, good on-ball defender, engaged and good off-ball defender. Like Denver right now, everything you're hearing about their feeling on this is like, man, this sucks. Like
tell those Denver people, Kyle. Tell them.
Part of the reason they're getting, they've been tangentially involved in the Paul George discussions when it was a potential opt-in and trade is because they realize the value on both ends of the floor that Kentavious Caldwell-Pope provides. So he would be an excellent addition as one of the other guys. I mean, like that's a home run hit if you get Paul George and you're able to get him. It's still a good addition in other scenarios where they don't get him, and maybe it's, you trade for Brandon Ingram, you trade for somebody else, or you sign more role players. But yeah, I don't think that's probably going to happen if I had to guess, but man, they would really be cooking with gas if they can make that happen.
So you're saying KCP would be leaving Denver because of financial considerations, not because he's sick of playing in front of a bunch of little brothers?
I mean, it certainly didn't help.
So going back to KCP and how it would happen, I can't imagine it would happen with cap space. Like we've been saying for months now, if the Sixers do sign Paul George to a max, they would have somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 million left at max to work with. That would be well under what we all expect KCP to get on the open market, and well under, quite frankly, what I would expect Orlando to be able to offer on the open market. The only way I could see this happening is working some kind of a convoluted multi-team sign and trade where then they would sign and trade KCP to the Sixers. Sixers would probably have to sign and trade someone like KJ Martin or something. One thing that
Anthony Melton, maybe.
Sure. One thing, but the problem with sign and trades, I have to double check this, but I think there's like a minimum, like a 2 or 3 year minimum on a contract.
I believe
I think it's
so, yeah.
3 years actually. that can be signed and traded?
No, I think there can be non-guaranteed
I'd have to double
years,
check.
I believe, if I remember correctly on that.
But one of the nice things on contracts between like $7.5 million and $29 million, the salary matching rules are a little more lax than they used to be. You can take back basically up to what you send out plus $7.5 million. So like if you trade Paul Reed right now, I'm going to screw up Paul Reed and Paul George all night. I apologize.
You might not
right
have
now.
to deal with that problem much longer.
But if you trade Paul Reed, you can take back $15 million for his $7.5 million that you send out. So if you take his $15 million, add a couple more on someone like KJ or DeAnthony, something like that, you can match that easier than you would expect. The problem is there are actually two reasons the Sixers would be hard capped the first apron. The first is taking back more salary in a trade than they send out. The second would be taking back a player in a sign and trade deal. Both of those independently would hard cap the Sixers at the $178 million apron threshold. So it would be tough, not impossible. You might not be able to use like the room mid-level. You might not be able to use maybe all of your remaining cap space after Paul George. But there might be some cap gymnastics where you can get that to work. Where I wonder is how are you going to make that so that everyone else is agreeable to that trade as well? It seems like it would be very tough for me to imagine it coming through. But Daryl is very creative about these things. And that is the only pathway I could see. It wouldn't be signing him outright. It would be some convoluted sign and trade that would hard cap you at the first apron.
Paul Reed for Bogdanovich, Joe says in the chat. Well, I don't know how that one was going to happen. Which Bogdanovich are you talking about? In Atlanta?
I don't know if you're getting
Brooklyn?
either for Paul Reed.
No, not for him.
Maybe
no,
old
No, but
Bogdanovich.
like Paul Reed and a couple picks is, I think, what that would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for which one? Either one? Atlanta?
No, Atlanta. Yeah.
Atlanta?
I'm much more interested in Atlanta.
Yeah, but that would be a good one. But I mean, just that's. But see, this is what we're gonna be finding out once things get underway in about 30 minutes, as we find out what happens in the association as things start to really just go down. Because if and when we hear about Paul George and the Philadelphia 76ers, we'll get to some other possibilities in the event that he doesn't sign, which direction they could go. That's where things really start to get interesting because of the cap space and where they need to go afterwards to try to fill out the rest of the roster around he and Maxey and Embiid, and certainly the true draft picks. And we'll see if Paul Reed, of course, Ricky Council, also here on the contract. Jeff Doughton, by the way, saw that Keith was reporting that Keith Pompey of the Inquirer.com was reporting that they did not pick up the rest of his contract. So he's now a free agent. Also, Turk
Which
Smith.
that creates, I believe, like another $1 million of wiggle room that they have.
Is
I remember correctly. Derek would
I'm sorry, I was reading Twitter. What'd
Jeff
you say?
Doughton, by
Jeff
not picking
Doughton.
up his option. It's like $1 million difference.
Oh, I didn't even have him on my cap sheets.
Okay. Well, then. Fair enough.
There's that.
Poor
There's
Jeff
that.
Doughton.
And your boy
Sorry,
Turk.
buddy, you weren't even factoring into my
Well, yeah,
plans.
Turk
Turk is-
according to Paul Hudrick over at Liberty Ballers, that he's
Yep,
hitting the old dusty trail.
that one
So
hurts. That one hurts right here.
I'm going to start playing that See You Again song. Whoa.
Oh, yes. Please go.
Yeah.
Do that.
Nobody wants to hear me trying to sing that song.
So we have a lot. Let's squeeze in the super chat here quickly. Bree, what we have a bunch of them real time. Prince Blue says, happy Sean Wayans Day. Yes, we got to mention.
Get out of here.
Got to mention Sean Wayans here on
So wait,
Free
does that
Agency
mean
Frenzy Day.
he doesn't like Paul George? Is that like is that the lesser of the free agent options? Am I reading too much into that?
I think he
there's so
likes
many
Paul
chats
George.
that I'm.
I think he likes Paul George. Just has to throw in the Sean Wayans. But we appreciate the
It
donation.
is
as
a
always.
crazy. It's one of those running jokes where I feel like we just have to stop explaining it, so only like the original listeners will pick up on it.
know
Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
where they are. And one more, and then we'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll look at a few other things. Tyus Jones and Ish Smith, or we riot. Shaheed says Tyus Jones or Ish Smith. Ish doesn't really play anymore. He's one of the best guys, though, that we've seen coming through the
Really
Sixers
good
in years. So good guy. Tyus Jones, of course. Kyle wanted him last year at the trade deadline. Heavy on the Tyus Jones part. Might have just drafted Tyus Jones, if not a little bit better. And the young kid and Jared McCain.
Whenever people say like, oh, the process lasted 5 years, which is always over exaggerated, or Hinkie had 3 years, I say, no. The
They
process
tanked for a decade.
The process was dead when they traded 2 first-round draft picks for Ish Smith. It was dead.
In December. To pick up the first win to snap that losing streak.
All they were trying to do right there was avoid setting the record for
that was against the Phoenix Suns that particular night.
Speaking of the Suns, if you want to keep the sun out of your eyes this summer.
No problem today or right now.
No problem today, but it is a problem throughout the summer. You guys got to get ready for the season ahead with Shady Rays. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company offering a world-class product. Rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. Now, you say it's raining and it's cloudy, Devon, and I get it. That's not the time you need sunglasses always. But sometimes right after the rain, slick conditions on the road, the sun comes back out.
Very true.
And then that sun is hitting the surface. It's blinding your eyes. You need those Shady Rays in the car, coming home from the beach on the weekend, wherever you might need those sunglasses. Shady Rays always has your back. And by the way, you'll look pretty stylish doing it. And plus, if your shades ever go missing or take an unexpected hit, you don't need to sweat it. They have the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair backed by lost or broken replacements. And if you don't love your shades, you can exchange them for a new pair or return them worry-free within 30 days. So exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays giving out the best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com, use code PHLY for 35% off of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. And ladies and gentlemen, we probably also need to choose chill today, right? Everyone is amped up, fired up. We think things are happening. Things look good. But sometimes when it all looks good is when that gut punch comes. So let's all take a step back, choose chill, and then reach for an ice cold Coors Light, because with Coors Light, you know you're getting an ice cold beer when the mountains turn blue on the bottles and cans, right as they hit that perfect temperature. It's going to be a choose chill weekend coming up, 4th of July. Everyone's going to, hopefully get a couple days off there, spend time with your friends, spend time with your family. Hopefully there's some fireworks for us tonight with Paul George, and then you watch some fireworks on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the whole weekend coming up, if that's your thing. If not, maybe the fireworks stress you out for various reasons. They stress my dog out, certainly. Always got to watch out for my dog, Lou. Tell your dog.
Shout out, Lou.
Step inside, choose chill, and then reach for that cold layered, cold filtered, cold packaged beer with a smooth finish. Mountain Cold Refreshment from our friends at Coors Light. When you choose to rise above it all, choose chill, choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/PHLY basketball. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
What up, Lou? Just wanted to shout out
Shout
Lou.
out to Lou.
Yeah.
And shout out to,
Shady Rays. The future is bright.
The future might be bright around here, guys. So let's put on our rose-colored glasses. Talk about why the future is bright for the Philadelphia 76ers.
Some rookies.
For once. Brought to you by Shady Rays. Head to shadyrays.com. Use code PHLY at checkout for 35% off polarized sunglasses.
Is the future bright for the rookies? Is it bright for them? Well, they got drafted. So
yeah, I mean, it's bright if they stay here.
I think Paul George might be overshadowing the rookies at this point.
Well, yes, but I'm just talking about their future, the new guys. Just talking
the
about
future might be bright for Tyrese and Joel. How about that? I mean, look, because let's just say this happens. We don't know that it's going to happen, but it's looking a little better.
It is looking pretty good.
We're feeling pretty positive.
I do appreciate you wearing sunglasses
when it's dark and raining and thunderstorm. Yeah, I can barely see the screen now, so it happens. But
these lights are bright, so it seems like it works.
Definitely works. Jared Allen over there.
That's right.
The lights were brighter than expected.
But you're handling it much better than Jared Allen.
Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey are now on the precipice of upgrading potentially from Tobias Harris as their third guy to Paul George. And we had someone in our Discord, our diehard Discord, by the way, which is great. You should check it out. Sign up. Asking, how much better is Paul George than Tobias Harris? Actually, the answer is a lot. And it's not just because of the pure talent, although the talent is better for Paul George. He is more of a true wing, guy who can do what true wings do. But the skill set fit is unbelievable. Like, we're talking about a guy who's basically been taking 8 threes a game for the last 5 to 6 years, hitting them around a 40% clip. He takes more pull-up threes per game than Tobias Harris took total threes per game for Philadelphia. And by the way, he's doing that playing with other high-volume guys like Kawhi Leonard, like James Harden, like Russell Westbrook, like Carmelo Anthony when he was in OKC, and that was their third guy between him and Russ. He has shown the consistent ability to get shots up early, often, and at a great clip, no matter who he's playing with. I cannot stress enough how meaningful that catch and shoot and pull up three-point shooting ability and willingness would make for this team. We'll dive deep into his fit if/when he commits to Philadelphia. But if they get him, it is a monumental upgrade. And then there are other guys to go and get as well to fill out this roster. So I know some of you are skeptical. I know some of you are not as excited about Paul George because he is 34 years old, and that's a reasonable concern. Give that guy a max contract. The bar has been so low for that third guy for years now that I think some of you might get blown away by how different it is just having a good, at times great player in that third spot alongside these two guys.
The difference is going to be significant. So anytime the only reason you bring up Paul George and Tobias' name in the same sentence is the fact that he's replacing him in the starting lineup.
And because they're paid a lot of money.
And that's
outside
it.
of that.
Outside of that, there's no competition at all. We're talking about potentially a future Hall of Famer where Tobias Harris is a Hall of Fame frustrating player in Philadelphia. For the 5 years.
Where are you going with Hall of Fame on this one?
Them going that far because, and look, we haven't talked about him a lot since the final game of the season, and for a good reason. We'll talk about him tonight, I'm sure, if he does sign with the team early here once things get underway at 6 p.m. But the two players and talking about them as if there's no upgrade, that's just ridiculous when you're evaluating the player. Yeah, he's going to have to adjust to playing with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, different from others, but he has played with stars, and he has thrived in those roles, playing with those other people. Tobias Harris, some good with him, more bad while he was here, but there is no comparison between the two players. A guy who can defend the way that he has in the past. We'll see what happens if he is in the Sixers uniform, but defending the way that he has in the past, of course, being a multi-time All-Star, being able to score on all three levels, and a lot of it without the hesitation where we were questioning so many things with Tobias Harris and evaluating his games, of course, off days, but certainly post-game shows that we have done specifically here together for our time here on PHLY. So when you look at those pull-up three opportunities, you're not questioning it if Paul George is doing so unless you just simply say it was a bad shot based on how he was defended or some other play that may have happened that will cause some frustration with it, and you have to go back and do like Kyle said and choose chill. But for the most part, Derek, there's no comparison between these two players.
Even at his advanced age, even after all the injuries, there's just no
none.
If Tobias Harris was as willing and capable of shooting as Paul George is with the high release point and the willingness to get off contested shots, we would have had probably some different outcomes over the last couple of years, and you would view Joel Embiid differently. Couple of quick tweets I want to bring up. Jake Fisher, who we've already mentioned on the show, said that he called an agent who represents a wing not named Paul George, Klay Thompson or KCP. No, he's talking about Klay Thompson and KCP. They'll tell you their clients' options likely depend on the outcomes of those veterans. So basically, a lot of the Sixers' backup options that you were worried about losing, if Paul George takes his time and doesn't sign with the Sixers, it sounds like they might be waiting too. We'll see whether or not that actually happens.
These are wings.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's good news to at least alleviate some of the concerns. Also from these are stats from...
Future really is bright once you take those sunglasses off and stare down our lights in here.
These are stats from Synergy brought up by HB Basketball. Paul George last season, 94th percentile spot up, 92nd percentile scoring out of pick and roll, 75th in ISO, 63rd off of screens, 80th in post up. Now post up doesn't matter, but...
This is our
breaking news.
This is our breaking news
bell
sounder for the night.
Golden
folks.
State is waiving Chris Paul. According to Shams Charania, Paul had a $30 million guarantee date today. He now becomes a free agent.
All right. So look,
I didn't want to he's a big
completely
name.
worth.
He's a big name.
He's a big name.
Big name as a
Devon gave me the signal.
Bell, man. Breaking news. Chris Paul. But Chris Paul has been linked to the Phoenix Suns, the LA Clippers, the LA Lakers. People here, at least in Philadelphia, were wondering, maybe even before the Jared McCain selection on Wednesday in the draft, that should the 76ers look towards Chris Paul if he was waived by the Golden State Warriors. And, of course, that big number off the books. So that is one to watch, more so on the West Coast for the Western Conference, but a big name to watch and how it might play out for some others. Because, look, James Harden and where he ends up back with the Clippers. We saw the stuff that we talked about with maybe the Lakers also being involved. So Chris Paul, even though we look at him as a backup, maybe somebody else might see an opportunity him for play some decent starter minutes with a quality backup behind him. But that is bell-worthy on the breaking news there as they waive Chris Paul.
Now, to Derek's point, mostly on the stats that were shared there at the end about Paul George's, mostly his shooting ability, but just his offensive profile. I think one thing that should not be overlooked is his ability to and willingness to shoot basically out of a phone booth sized window, right? Like, the thing with Tobias is not that he couldn't or wouldn't shoot. It's that he only really shot in circumstances that were perfect. He needed it's like a golfer who sits there and just like wags the club and is overthinking it. Paul George will see somebody closing out hard on him, and at his size, he will just rise up and shoot, and he will do so quickly. If he doesn't, it's a decisive drive toward the paint. He is a completely different beast as a shooter. He has the mechanics, the mentality to shoot right over a guy who is hand in his face sprinting at him, and that is a very meaningful difference. Setting aside the efficiency, we've seen how those record scratch moments can hurt this offense, can hurt them when there are double teams thrown at Joel and the ball swings around the floor. I have no such concerns with Paul George.
Well, good news. I don't have that problem because my golf game sucks no matter what situation I'm in. No, I mean, to your point about record scratch threes, like, it becomes so much easier to double off of Embiid or Maxey if you feel like you can, double off and then pop back out and contest the shooter who doesn't want to take that shot. A 35% three-point shooter who is, firing whenever he's open is much more valuable than a 35% shooter who is very selective, even though the percentages are the same. It's just in terms of gravity. It's in terms of willingness to help off of your stars. It's about making your stars' life easier. And I think, as I said in a show a couple days ago, you're not going to get a player better than Joel Embiid or probably Tyrese Maxey, either in a trade or in free agency. LeBron James just isn't leaving teams. The Lakers. What you need to do is, first of all, not freaking die every time Joel Embiid sits. That would be great. But also make moves that will make your stars even better, make their lives easier, make their passes easier, make their scoring opportunities easier. Stars who don't give something away. Paul George would be so much more helpful in that regard than Tobias Harris has ever been.
And by the way, if we brought up KCP is a role player who really doesn't give things away.
Yeah.
So he
doesn't add as much, but he doesn't give things away.
He doesn't take things off the table. And that's why he's such an appealing option. As I think it's more in the fallback plan type scenario. But, if they want to go the convoluted, try to squeeze this guy into the framework after Paul George, then, it's why he makes a lot of sense.
All right, so a lot of people, though, I'm seeing in the chat, and this is an important piece just to go over again, since we've talked about him so much, but of course we're 15 minutes away from the start of free agency. The age of 34 for Paul George. Now, this may not matter if he doesn't sign here. However, since we are 15 minutes away, maybe we get some news here while we're doing the show. We hope that we do, so we can talk about it with you live in the moment. The age, though, Derek, age 34, it does cause a lot of concern for a lot of Sixer fans out there because of that. The injuries have happened in the past, but then there's the fact that you're giving a player $200+ million on a 4-year deal already at the age of 34. Why would this potentially be the right move, even with the age?
Couple of reasons. First of all, it's the right move because it's the best one in front of you. And I know that logic doesn't always hold up. That's some of the same logic they used on Tobias Harris way back when. But in a situation where you only have cap space because Tyrese Maxey's $13 million cap hold is so much less than he's going to make on his next contract, you do have to act now. So first of all, he's the best option in front. He's a good option, skill set wise, next to Embiid and Maxey. And with the cap, it was reported a whole bunch of cap stuff came out today, including specific numbers for 2024-25, but also that there continues to be the expectation that it will rise 10% year over year. Paul George's contract will only rise 5% year over year. It will become less damaging. Well, not less damaging. It'll take up less of the salary cap in future years than it does this next year. That is meaningful. That's meaningful because you will have less or more room under the second apron and all of those restrictions in future years. So it's, look, would I love a 27-year-old Paul George? Yes. Would I have loved it if Devon could have tampered a little more effectively? Yes. That didn't happen, so we're making the best of the situation that we have.
And we've said throughout this process, right, that a big, big piece of the appeal here is Paul George is costing you, as Derek's phone dies a horrible death on the other side of the set.
I hope not.
I hope
There'd
not.
be a real bad day.
It would be a bad day. Paul George is only costing you cap space. It's only the money. And it's the whole reason that this past season was spent on, hey, a lot of expiring contracts. We're not bringing on future money. So that when you get here, you're the only team with contending aspirations that can sign a player of this magnitude with cap space while also maintaining your options down the road to use your picks, trade your picks. And look, here's the other thing. If they secure Paul George and he's locked in, you've saved all these picks. You have 5 first-round picks to trade potentially. You could then immediately go after, like, I know everyone jumped on they could get Markkanen and Paul George, and that's not, but you could then say, hey, we're going to take 2 of these first, and we move for a younger player, an ascending player that maybe they're not valued that highly by their current team, and we're going to buy in on them now before their salary gets bloated, that they're on a team-friendly deal. And that's somewhat that builds your athleticism, that builds your youth, the fact that, you know, you
Similar
are
to a player we talked about, Patrick Williams, before he signed this deal.
Or
this
if it was somebody, now Denny Avdia would have been a great option for this, but somebody in that lane where the current team is in a place where they're not contending and they're trying to figure out what they're doing, and you make a talent bet on a guy that fits alongside your other pieces here. Oh, breaking news. Devon, would you like to?
I'll do this one. According to Shams, James Harden plans to sign a 2-year, $70 million contract to return to the Los Angeles Clippers. Again, that's according to Shams. So after all the things that happened here in Philadelphia where he wanted that 4-year deal to get traded to LA, he is taking a 2-year, 35 low. Annually for James Harden. Now, the reports were that he was looking, because as we sit here and talk so much about Paul George, that Steve Ballmer and the Clippers were just simply not going over 3 years, just like they did not with Kawhi Leonard. And then there were some reports out there that said that James Harden might take a little bit of a haircut, like he did here, and for the Philadelphia 76ers the year before he left, the season before he left, when they lost to Boston in that second round. So he does it again, 2 years, $70 million for James Harden to stay with the Los Angeles Clippers.
So I don't know this for a fact, so don't aggregate this, aggregators. I don't think that's radically different than what he would have gotten if he just simply waited for the Sixers to make an offer.
No, I agree.
Last year.
I
think,
100%.
in fact, I think it's exactly in the ballpark. I would have said 30 to 35 a year would have been my estimation.
Yeah. I think we're saying 3 years, 100, somewhere in there.
So some right in that
He ended up
range.
getting the same.
And the thing with that is, of course, the relationship with Daryl Morey telling him whatever he feels like Daryl Morey told him, and he felt like he was a liar, and therefore he was hurt, and he had to get out of here. Instead, the Clippers, hey, this is what you're going to get, and this is it. You either take it or leave it or join us with. So he's not going to the Lakers. He's sticking with the Clippers.
I will say, I feel like that's about what he's worth considering the concerns.
Yeah. He was pretty good last. He was
very good. He was probably worth more than that. It's just you don't want to bet on that going forward.
In the beginning, it wasn't great, but then when they went on that run and became the best basketball team for about a month, he was fantastic.
And sort of good on him for realizing that there probably wasn't going to be a team out there to pay him more. Like, is that the contract he wanted? No, probably not. I'm sure he had his sights set on the 3 years, 150 that Kawhi got, or something close to it, 120, whatever.
Should he have figured that out while he was here? I mean, forget about what I wanted to see. I'm just simply talking about for what it was. And we know that they're always the last ones to realize what their actual worth is. But shouldn't he have figured that out here also?
I think he felt like his boy was going to take care of him. And when it didn't happen, he got mad at him.
Do we think this is at all a tell of what they're doing with PG?
I'm a little worried. Having him locked under maybe what some people were expecting, does that change their willingness with Paul George? And more specifically, the fact that it's only a 2-year deal, does that change what they're willing to do with years down the line? I don't know. Now, again, I worry about everything.
You could spin it either
everything.
way, right? You could say, all right, well, they kept him at that rate in those years. Maybe that means they have an inkling of what Paul George is going to do. On the other side of it, you could say they're sticking to the path and the guidelines that we've heard are in place for the whole group, for Kawhi, for Paul George, and Harden. And as we've said many times, Paul George doesn't want to live by those guidelines. He has said, no, thank you. I would like more money. I would like more years. So
interesting.
It's a toss-up.
I think probably the key point here is that nobody expected James Harden to sign a 4-year deal. So the fact that it's shorter probably doesn't matter if Los Angeles' sticking point was that 4th year on Paul George's contract. Like, I don't think, James Harden getting less in year 2 and no year 3 impacts the Clippers' willingness to go 4 years with Paul George. But like I said, I worry about everything. So,
all right. 2 years, $70 million for James Harden. Let's throw in another super chat before we get to 6 o'clock. We are about 5 minutes away, close to 6 minutes away from 6 p.m. and the legal tampering period getting underway. Dylan says, you brought up the future years, Derek. Is the Embiid max extension, since the future is bright for Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey? You brought up the max extension as likely as the Maxey extension for Joel Embiid, or will it not work for the future?
The Embiid extension? Yeah, I expect the Sixers to give him that extension eventually. It'll be tough, but I think it's only, what is it, like a 3-year extension?
Yeah.
Eating and that takes away.
Ask what is it? You're the math man.
Look, I don't remember everything. I'm pretty sure it's a 3-year extension.
I'm going to say Devon and I are just here to sit here and smile while you do all the math.
No, I think it's a 3-year extension that rips up the last remaining years. So it's really just a 2-year extension. Mm-hmm. I think there's 3 years left, so it would be 5 years total. I would expect they will be willing to do that.
Player option on year 2 for James Harden, by the way.
Okay.
So in theory, could just be a 1 for 35, depending on now. Do I think James Harden's getting a long-term commitment?
No, but do I think James Harden thinks there's a chance he's getting a long-term commitment next summer?
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. Shahid says, I'm doing my best Elton Brand impersonations with the lower body injuries. I'm the new school Chevy. Well, I don't know about that, but yeah, we have talked about it because he would see me with the boot or something in the past, and we would certainly talk about the injuries that happened to Elton Brand and I. So yeah,
5-minute warning, everybody. Okay, do you want to do
warning.
Speed round predictions? What we think's going to happen here?
Chaos.
You want to start with George?
Start with Paul George. Gut check.
Gut check. He comes to Philadelphia on the max deal.
I said 55% chance he comes to Philadelphia earlier today. I will up that to 70%.
Wow.
70%.
And guys, I know that doesn't sound like real conviction.
For me is
70% from Derek is like me saying 99%.
I'm not 70% sure I'm going to make it home alive. So 70% is high.
So what do you say? We say yes.
I say he comes. He's coming to Philadelphia.
Why so high now?
Just every report coming out of Los Angeles,
including this James Harden piece.
Well, including I do think that the James. I joke a little bit that I worry about everything. I think if you read it, it's that they're not fully committed. The reason that they're giving this deal, they're not fully committed to this core. They know it's a temporary measure. That's why it's a 2-year deal with 1 year at a player option. I think they know Paul George is leaving, but I don't know that they know that Paul George is leaving.
Okay, Klay Thompson ends up where?
Dallas. I think he goes to the Mavericks. I think he goes to the Mavericks.
Somehow the Lakers make it happen.
I was going to say.
I don't entirely.
I like it. I think
know
LeBron
how.
and Clay are going to be hanging out. I'll say Lakers for him.
I just look at the playmaking from both Luka and Kyrie Irving to make things easy for him, where he doesn't have. That's why I say Dallas, but I would not be shocked at all.
Zach LaVine, stay or go?
Stay.
Who is taking that?
So
Stay. Yeah.
Stay.
We're all stay.
Yeah.
Contavious Caldwell-Pope. Where does he end up?
Orlando.
I agree. Orlando.
Wow, we're unified on that one too. I think we
Yeah.
all think Orlando.
We never agree.
That's how you know
That's
how you know he's definitely not going there. Larry Markkinen.
Stay.
Stay or
Utah.
go?
Stay.
Utah. Yeah, stay.
Stay.
Yeah.
Okay.
DeMar DeRozan.
That's a good one.
That's it. So
I have
to
no-
me, that might hinge on both Paul George and Clay, because I think there's a decent chance DeRozan returns to LA in some capacity.
Clippers.
I think he can go to either.
Okay.
It really depends on, does he? Yeah, he is an LA guy, by the way. I believe he's a Compton guy, right?
Yeah.
Compton
Mhm.
High School, if
Yep.
I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a good chance he ends up in LA in some capacity. I think if he doesn't go to one of those teams, I think he stays in Chicago.
If it's not Chicago and Paul George leaves, I will say it's the Clippers. I'll say the Clippers
Okay.
for DeMar DeRozan.
Hartenstein.
I want to say OKC, but with everything that they have going on in New York,
How much cap do they have? They have like 30-ish?
Yeah,
I forget exactly how
somewhere
much
in
they
that
have.
range.
they're in that
Yeah.
mix of that conversation. So I want to say OKC, but I think with the camaraderie that they have going on in New York, Leon Rose would just try to trade Mitchell Robinson and bring back Hartenstein. So I say the Knicks keep him.
I thought it would be OKC for a while. I think he might end up back in New York. I'll say OKC just for the fun of it.
I say
I'll
New
go
York.
with New York just to.
Yeah.
Jonas Valanciunas.
LA.
Lakers. I think so actually, I don't know if that can happen if they do the Clay.
If they do the Clay part. So I had Clay going to Dallas. So I say Jonas Valanciunas to the Lakers. Anthony Davis can go back to playing more of the four. They can be out there together. When he's not on the floor, Jonas Valanciunas, Anthony Davis can certainly play the
5:59
five.
minute left.
1 minute away, so let's set things up. You are listening to, of course, our PHLY Sixers free agency show here on a Sunday, The Frenzy. It is presented by our good friends, Rothman Orthopedics. We are 1 minute away from free agency getting underway in the NBA. Do we get a trade for Brandon Ingram, Derek?
No.
Oh, that's another good one.
Today or over the summer?
In general.
In general.
Yeah, I think they do.
Okay.
Where I have no
Brandon
idea.
Ingram for Darius Garland. Book it.
Ooh.
Okay.
Oh. I was reading something there.
They've got a
They
lot
don't
of
want to give
small
him the
guards,
extension.
I guess you're right. Now that they traded for DeJounte.
They don't want to give him the
3-team
extension.
trade. How about that? Garland goes somewhere. Ingram to the Cavs. Who the hell knows?
Oh, man.
All right, here we go.
All right,
Klay
here we
Thompson
go.
is departing the Warriors. All right.
Bell ringing for
I
Luke
don't-
Cornett.
Does Luke Cornett really get
Let's
a
have
bell?
that.
Cornett
Let's have
returns
that.
to the
All right.
Celtics on a 1-year deal.
He's not coming to Philadelphia to back up Joel Embiid. So there's that. Where does Andre Drummond go?
I mean, it might be
Philadelphia.
right here. Yeah.
Andre Drummond to the Sixers.
Okay. You wanted
So-
that Drummond stuff during the trade
So
deadline.
Sham says
So
Klay
we like
Thompson
that.
is out with the Warriors, and the sides will begin to work through sign and trade. Woj
Sign and trade.
has Cornett to the Celtics.
According to Shams, James Harden future had no bearing on Paul George's decision. It did not matter whether Paul George returned or didn't.
There you go.
James-
Now, hey, anxiety man over there, you can bring it on down.
Well,
Oh,
Harden,
that's not how anxiety
Harden
works, buddy.
definitely wanted to stay in LA. Of course, he wanted to stay in LA. But now that's the question for Paul George. How much does he worry about the money versus wanting to stay at home? That's my one concern when we've talked about all of this with him is if he does leave and he gets his money, how happy is he going to be? You just talked about him being one of the weirdest superstars that we've seen in this league, Kyle, for a long time. His up and down nature, the Jekyll and Hyde of it all. How much are we going to have to worry about? Look at it. He just doesn't seem right. He doesn't seem happy. If we're body language cops during the season, how much, if he does leave, does that start to creep up of, well, yeah, he just really didn't want to leave Los Angeles?
So I would say one of the main concerns I would have with Paul George is that exact phenomenon, and something, frankly, we saw before with Al Horford. Like Al Horford, we can talk about the weird skill set clashes and all the other factors that went into this. I think it was pretty clear that Al Horford came here specifically because of the money, because the Sixers offered the most and he looked at it as foolish to turn that down.
Is the Cornet
a second tweet about, come on,
that's
Woj.
big news,
You're
man.
killing me, bro.
Well,
okay.
Everybody's waiting for Paul George.
I mean, you've got to let them know who they're represented by. That's how that works
Kevin
nowadays.
Love, 2 years, $8 million to return to the Heat.
Okay.
So I would worry a little bit about Paul George coming here because of the money. He obviously wanted, if all other things were equal, he obviously wanted to stay in LA.
Yes.
Will he be fully committed, the best possible guy? And frankly, like, is he willing to do the actual things that a third guy, I should say, has to do? So,
and
like,
remember this with the second star thing. He was saying, interviewed many times, where he recognizes he was second behind Kawhi Leonard in Los Angeles.
And I think he's willing to acknowledge that.
Mm-hmm.
But he gave interviews last year or said on his podcast that they missed the dirty work guys like Nick Batum, Robert Covington,
right.
etc. And it's like, bro, you're going to have to be one of those guys. Like Milwaukee, when they won the title, is a great example. Drew Holiday is one of your three guys. He's doing the dirty work. He's defending the other team's best player.
Yep.
He's mixing it up. He's, his offensive role goes up and down and up and down and up and down night to night. You have to come in with a real clear-headed idea of what it means to be that third guy on this team. I do think Paul George has the skill set, but we've said many times on the show, it's part of why I discount somebody like Zach LaVine, both in a general NBA framework and with the Sixers. You have to have the mental capacity, the mindset, the mentality to attack that third guy role the way you need to. And so we're going to see, like, has he done that at times? Did he look awesome as the third guy with Kawhi, the featured player, James Harden as the table setter? Yes, he had some awesome moments last season. He's a very, very, very good player. But that doesn't mean he's coming here with just like, he's the perfect fit and nothing. It's just going to work. And we just put our heads on the pillow, fall asleep with no concerns.
5 minutes in, you know what my number one takeaway from free agency is so far?
What?
Teams value second-round picks more than I thought because they are so
No
worried
more
about tampering. I'm not saying they didn't tamper. I'm just saying they're not leaking it as quickly. We're 5 minutes in, and all we have is Luke Cornet.
We do have
Come on,
James Harden.
We have a report.
But you can renegotiate. You can't tamper on your own free
I
agent.
don't know if this is a bell, but there is a report out of Sacramento from Sean Cunningham, a Kings reporter.
Just like a little.
That's
tap
like a
on the bell.
baby.
Yeah.
And stop it. Okay.
Sean Cunningham says, quote, sources confirm
There
Sacramento.
we go. Oh, legitimate bell. Klay Thompson plans to have discussion with the Mavericks, Lakers, Clippers, and 76ers in the opening hours of free agency.
Sources tell
According to
ESPN from Woj.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. I continue to discount the Sixers component of this.
So do I.
But keep an eye.
And that's a wait and see, depending on Paul George, probably, right?
That's a backup plan / agent needs another name to throw in their plan.
Fair.
I agree with both of those sentiments.
What was your Cunningham?
Sean Cunningham says, sources confirm the Sacramento Kings are pursuing a trade for Brandon Ingram. I'm told the Kings have had discussions with the Pelicans, and it's worth noting Ingram was an emerging star under Coach Alvin Gentry, who works in the Kings front office. So keep an eye on Sacramento as a potential trade partner for the Pelicans.
I mean,
who I do think, by the way, I think
those guys,
the DeJounte Murray trade really crystallizes like they got to make moves because I like DeJounte. I like Brandon Ingram.
They want to get Trey Murphy on the floor. They have to pay. They're going to pay him, and you need room for him to play.
They need shooting, and they need guys who are like, again, do we think Brandon Ingram could be a catch and shoot, space the floor, higher volume guy? Yes. Do you want to take that bet when you're also building around Zion, when you have DeJounte Murray? Probably not. It's a tough thing. So that looks like it's.
So I got one more here. This one from it's relaying, it's aggregating a report, but we like him because it's news we want to hear. This one from Sixers Justin. Brian Windhurst says Paul George is meeting with Philadelphia today, and if he likes what he hears, he will be coming to Philadelphia very soon. He expects all the other moves to come in after that.
Okay.
Hey, Paul George, here's the pitch. We're giving you the max for the max amount of years, and you play with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey.
What else do you need to know, man?
We will treat you like a sultan. I mean, what else is the
Hey, Joel,
the pitch
already
is the
talked
pitch.
to him off camera. You have to assume so, just go for it. Just have the conversation. So we got a lot of super chats. We want to run through a couple of these also while we wait. MDB says, this was a while ago. 1.6K for us here doing numbers, Vince. Vinny,
Yeah, we're like
doing pretty well.
22 now.
Now we have 2,100, so we appreciate it. Thank you, MDB. That's a light.
Hold on.
That's a light kind of. So what are we getting here?
Chris Haynes on NBA TV just reported the Bulls proposed a Andrew Wiggins and Chris Paul for Zach LaVine trade, and the Warriors said no and waived Chris Paul.
With so draft capital coming back?
So that part I don't know. This is that's from Sam S. Warriors podcaster, Sam S. Vendari at the Light Years podcast. So I'm hearing this through the grapevine. But that tells you what Zach LaVine's value is around the league. Do we want to do a quick Clay soliloquy here? Because that is the most relevant news for, as of right now, it's the big Sixers news as we wait for the Paul George meetings to take place.
When we spoke about him last week, we talked about how it's not the greatest fit just because he's not the same player defensively. He doesn't move. He's older, so he doesn't move the same. And for the whole frustration tour that he might have of trying to make Golden State understand that they made a mistake. Listen, you playing in the East Coast, so you would only see those guys twice a year. And how much is it going to cost? Is he going to get that balloon payment? Sure, the shooting fits around Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, but what does that mean overall for the rest of the roster? Because the defense is a big part of why you would want Klay Thompson when you would talk about him in the past. Of course, the shooting is obvious. The defense is no longer there.
Yeah, it's no longer there. He's no longer there on defense. No, I'm just not going to worry too much about this because I would be surprised if it happens. Like I said, they might take a meeting. They might do their due diligence. They might have him as a backup plan. I will overreact to that signing if and when it happens. Until then, I'm trying to choose chill. I know they're not a sponsor. They're a sponsor. They're a perpetual sponsor. It doesn't matter. We're trying to. Yeah.
We read that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I'm choosing chill.
Choosing chill.
Not literally because I have to drive home, but like in terms of Clay, I'm choosing chill.
Yeah. Prior to the events of the last few days, I said on the show on, Thursday or Friday, after the Sam Amick report came out last week, that I was very skeptical that Clay would end up here, that I didn't think they'd be heavy in there. For now, I treat it as they're a cap space team, and he is a guy hoping to take a good chunk of somebody's cap space or a big deal.
Well, and like I said, if Woj said they're going to have a meeting for him, I trust Woj enough that they will.
Oh, for sure.
They have a meeting scheduled. I just don't trust that it's likely.
It's the level of seriousness with which they're pursuing
Remember when
him.
LeBron James had a meeting with the Sixers? Doesn't mean that he was really going to sign here.
Yeah. And look, we talked on the show multiple times that if his price came down enough, of course you have interest in Klay Thompson, right? We have plenty of concerns about his defense and where he could be as a high-level player on a team trying to compete for a championship. But if you bring that cost down enough, and important factor here as it relates to leaving the Warriors, it does seem that he was actively mad about how he's been treated by them over the last month, 2 months or so. That this is, I know we talked about the pride factor with Paul George and what he was being offered. It seems like because of everything Clay and the Warriors went through together, that he really took it personally that they've been, I'd say, lowballing him throughout this process. And so maybe that's incentive enough for him to just say, I don't even care if you're offering equal money in Golden State, I will just go elsewhere. He might be that aggrieved at this point. And so as a due diligence factor, sure, of course you take a meeting. It's Klay Thompson. He will shoot the shit out of the ball for his entire career. He might have weaknesses on defense now. He might not be able to dribble very much, but that guy will shoot. And so, of course, you have a meeting with him. I just don't think at the top end of the market that they're going to get to the number that it would require in anything other than a backup situation. That'd be my guess.
And it might also be like, hey, how big of a discount? You brought it up. How big of a discount would you consider taking? Like, how much do you really want to chase another ring? How much do you think you would fit next to Joel? How much?
Because going to the Lakers will have to take a discount too.
So maybe they're just like, hey, the price is so low that we have to do our due diligence.
When the reports with the Lakers were talked about earlier today, it was around that $13 million.
And the Sixers, if they go the route of waiving Paul Reed, now I got Chris Paul in my head too. I've got three different. This is going to be a catastrophe.
Paul. It's like that call on what's that show? The SEC network guy.
If they
Paul
waive
Finnbaum.
Paul Reed, they can match that. So they could be doing due diligence.
You don't know ball, Paul.
Maybe it's gotten low enough where they would consider it. We'll see.
Speaking of Chris Paul, Mark Stein was reporting that the San Antonio Spurs would have big time, strong interest in Chris Paul to team up with Victor Wembanyama in San Antonio.
I mean, if you want the absolute perfect guy to just play the next year or two with Wemby and reinforce to Stephon Castle, brother, just throw that ball up there
and
to the 7'4" guy. Chris Paul is that guy. I mean, look, I'm a Chris Paul mark. I have been for a long time. I loved him at his peak. I think people forget that he's making guys like Emeka Okafor.
Yeah.
Even somebody like Aaron Gray looked like a capable rotation guy. He goes to Phoenix, and DeAndre Ayton is looking like the chief in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And then he goes to Portland, and the real DeAndre Ayton stood up. Chris Paul.
And they draft Klingon for that reason. Yeah.
Chris Paul will make your young big man look like an absolute superstar, and Wemby already does. He understands the job of being a point guard. That would be one of my absolute favorite fits in the entire league.
Here, M2G in our chat says, Clay, 2 years, $40 million, so worth it. So worth it.
Can you get me at like 225? Because I think that's where my interest starts being like, yeah.
That 13.
We'll try that.
Yeah, right around there.
Although that's
like the rest of the cap space.
And even there, I have to see like what other options are out there. Can we actually make KCP work in a trade somehow? Like stuff like that.
All right. So with a few other, since we have not talked about the 76ers actual free agents, since we've talked about so many others, who do you expect to get the most interest on the market from Buddy Hield, Nick Batum, Kelly Oubre, Kyle Lowry, as we look at the Sixers actual free agents? We've talked about it enough where we've thought Kyle Lowry, Nick Batum, and Kelly Oubre specifically had the best chance of coming back to Philadelphia. Who would you expect, Derek, to have the most interest on the market?
In terms of?
Away from here.
Yeah. It's a good question. So much is going to... I honestly don't know. I mean...
I think it's Oubre just because he's younger, but he's a more divisive player for sure.
Yeah, but you only need one. Lowry and Batum feel like they're more valuable to the Sixers than other teams.
Sure. Although Melton, you have heard his name a lot elsewhere, Lowry.
Yeah.
Right.
Melton the back complicates things, and that could be divisive. Why is everyone looking at their phone? What's going on?
I was not.
So just heard from... I don't know if this is considered breaking news, but I can confirm that the Sixers representatives are meeting today in California with Paul George.
I was told that earlier today.
Yeah, so I'm just making sure because it's out there and we discussed it. So
yep, it's happening.
Reaffirming that
it's happening. The meeting is happening.
So I think
the signing is happening. But the meeting is happening.
I mean, we could go through the different players out. Oubre is the biggest threat to get the most money of that group.
Yes.
Unless somebody just takes a wild gamble on Melton and says, we'll hope that the back issue is not as bad as it looked at the end of last season and has impacted him for a couple of years. Because I think at the end of the day, if you get healthy DeAnthony Melton, he's the best of that group as a viable two-way guy. But I do think Kelly last year dispelled a lot of notions about his game. I think that he obviously has the chops to be a good defender. He was a much better defender down the stretch than he was on a consistent basis anyway at any other point in his career. Really, the variable with him is, will teams be willing to live with the shooting variance? And I think a success story in that regard, and they seem like they've moved things around to try to keep him, is Derek Jones Jr. in Dallas, right? Like he's been a problematic shooter at times in his career. Certainly wasn't a great shooter most of this season either, but they bet on him as he's an athletic, defensive-minded guy on the wing, can do a lot of stuff off ball other than shooting, and they ended up reaping the rewards. So I think in some ways, Derek Jones having that kind of season helps out a guy like Oubre that you say, hey, we'll give you a decent-sized deal for a year or two. Kelly helped himself quite a bit. I would say the most likely of the Oubre, Batum, Lowry combo to come back is Batum. I think he's probably the highest priority of those guys, and that's a big part of it. I think Lowry is certainly high odds, but I think there's at least a small chance some team gives him slightly more than the minimum, and I don't know that the Sixers will go over the minimum in order to retain him, especially considering they just drafted McCain, another small guard, and that will complicate things in the rotation. But yeah, I think Batum, pretty big priority. Kelly would be a priority, although just below Batum, and I think that's the money will matter a decent bit there.
Jazz are waving center Omir. You're 7 from
no
Adrian,
Bell on that.
Adrian
You nailed
Wojnarowski.
that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I didn't go Bell. So
No Bell.
there you go.
I was looking at that. I'm like, I'm not going to try it.
I didn't hear no
let
Bell.
Devon try to have that one.
If you're just joining us out there, this is the PHLY Sixers Free Agency Frenzy Show here on a Sunday, presented by Rothman Orthopedics. Derek Bodner, Kyle Neubeck, I'm Devon Givens. Brianna is here producing the show, producer extraordinaire that she is. The only news that we have so far is, according to the guys here, that the Sixers will be meeting at some point later on tonight, out there in LA with Paul George. So we'll see what happens there. James Harden is expected to sign a 2-year, $70 million deal to return to the Los Angeles Clippers. And Luke Cornett returns to Boston on a 1-year deal. That's all that we have here. 19 minutes in to the legal tampering period in the association. And no Sixers as of yet are signing with any other team. Buddy Hield, we didn't talk about him.
Yeah,
That's true. He might.
that's a real market depending one.
And it wasn't necessarily talking about him to return, just more of what's his market as a shooter out there, because shooting is still king in the NBA. So what do you expect about Buddy Hield?
I would expect someone will give him another chance. It just might be on a short-term deal for much less than they expected. He really is weird because when you look at the numbers on the back of the baseball card, like, they're the same. He shot the same percentage, averaged the same points per minute. It just didn't feel that way at all. And I wonder if some team is going to be like, maybe the situation wasn't right. Too much change. Embiid coming back late, yada, yada, yada. Do I think he's going to get the deal he was going to get like 6 months ago or before the season started? Because he had a pretty good year in Indy the previous year. No, I think it hurt him. But I think he'll have a suitor for sure.
I want to ask you guys a question while we're on the subject of Buddy. Do you think, given what happened last season, looking at the roster and how things shook out, do you think the Sixers will swing the other way on last year? I think they took some chances on guys who were not the greatest shooters. They were hoping to get some more two-way value. Do you think they might say, we're going all in on shooting, like get as many, because McCain certainly fits that profile. Paul George is going to help that. Do you just say, Joel, you're going to prop up everybody on defense, get every bomber you could possibly get in the league and bring them here, whether it's Clay, whether it's anybody else who can shoot, Buddy,
right.
Trading for somebody on another team? Do you
Jared
think
McCain.
that they would?
Yeah.
I mean, McCain was maybe the first signal that could happen, but do you think they would swing that far the other way, or do you think they still try to straddle the middle ground a little bit?
No, I mean, I certainly think they want two-way players. But I think shooting, I think the era of non-shooters, it's going to be real tough to justify your existence on this roster. I do think they're going to look to surround Joel Embiid with as much shooting as possible. And I don't think that means getting one bomber and then putting him next to like one non-shooter is the way to go about that. I think they want as many people on the floor as possible around Embiid and Maxey to shoot. But like part of the reason they give Paul George all this money is that he can shoot and also not be a liability.
This is worthy of a bell because we were just talking about this. Not sure can't verify this yet. Kelly Iko from The Athletic. Nicholas Batum will not be returning to the Sixers, sources tell The Athletic.
Whoa.
That would be a big development because we were just saying, I thought that would be one of their higher priorities. Right. What that suggests to me, he either might not be back in the NBA in general, or he might know he's got a big dollar amount waiting out there for him somewhere. And that would be pretty shocking for me, based on everything we've heard this offseason to this point.
That is a big development there. If that does not happen, Nick Batum, wow. Didn't see that one because especially when, the way that things ended at the season and you just happened to be a fly on the wall there in the locker room when Batum was talking to Joel Embiid. It's like, you're not retiring, you're coming back.
There was some real desire for him to in the locker room, in the front office. So I cannot
lobbying, like Joel was lobbying as the
season was right after the season had ended. And they're all, licking their wounds. Joel is advocating hard for Batum to return.
The fact that report came out without a corresponding he's going to this team makes me wonder if he's retired. Was Kelly Iko ever in Los Angeles?
He's a Houston-based guy. I believe he's from Houston.
But I know. That's why I was asking, where's that connection of covering
I can
him?
DM Kelly and ask him, hey, have you ever been from?
Yeah.
Are you from this
Can you give me your entire living history, please?
Yeah.
We're doing a live show, and I want to read it on air. Yeah, so the Buddy Hield piece with the fact that it just didn't seem like once Joel Embiid came back, well, not even before, it was before Joel Embiid came back, after that 6-game stretch that he had where he looked like a totally different player, averaging close to 20 and the 6 assists with the playmaking, shooting the basketball, and putting the ball on the floor, even engaged defensively. And he had that nice pick and roll partnership with Paul Reed there for a while, right there in those first few games, where things just started to fade for him and not playing that way, the way that you thought could still translate, not to 20, but could you give him double digits, still shoot the ball very well when Embiid got back out there, including Tyrese Maxey out there, that it just did not work. Now, could a full training camp with the guys, team around him, knowing exactly what it is, help him out and just try to boost his overall value again in the league if he signed a deal that was worth it for him, but to come back, he's still young enough at 31. The shooting doesn't go away. Yeah. I'm sorry, I was texting. Who are you talking about? Buddy Hield. Buddy. Yeah. That makes sense. He's only 31-year-old who's a free agent. I should have picked up on that. Yeah, it's cool. Look, I question his shooting a lot. I question shooting a lot. I think a lot of people look at the numbers because I think he shot like 37% with Joel Embiid on the floor. And a lot of that came early in the season. I think people will put a little too much stock on that. I don't think he has ever shot 37% for an extended period of time at any point in his NBA career. I don't trust that it would be that case going forward. And I just got done saying that like the era of non-shooters being on the floor next to Joel Embiid, I would be surprised if they look to continue doing that. And Kelly, with the way other teams defend him, is basically a non-shooter. I know he'll make 31%. Every now and then it'll look good and he'll get on fire. For the most part, he's a non-shooter. But because of the way he grew defensively, would I have interest? Yeah, at the right price, I would have interest. Mm-hmm. But it's not so much that like I think he's going to be better with another training camp or that he's going to get back to where he was. I mostly think the early season shooting was a mirage. I do think he can be a better version of the player he's been in the past with some more time next to Embiid. I think that's fair. But I think the shooting part specifically, I just don't expect that to carry over. I don't care how many training camps he has. He's a really good defender. He gives you a little bit off the bounce, gives you a little bit in transition, gives you a little bit attacking off the glass, a little bit cutting. He can be useful. I think Nick Nurse is smart and can find ways to use him. But he's not like a top. Maybe he's a little more of a priority now that Batum's not coming back. Right. He's not a top priority, in part because I don't trust that shot much at all.
You're talking about Kelly, right?
You
Just
did the
making
exact
sure.
same thing.
I'm reading 3 texts. I'm on Twitter.
We were still talking
Devon
about
spent
Hield a
like
little
3
bit.
minutes asking me a question. I'm like,
Did
Devon,
you
who
guys
talking
see that?
about?
There was a video that circulated about it was like a Chinese bot farm, and they showed a wall of it's like 150 cell phones all just attached to a computer. That's what I feel like right now, and I have basically 3 screens that I'm looking at. So, yeah,
Keep it going, man. That's what you need to be doing. That's all good.
Let's speculate for a second. Let's say that let's say Nico is hitting the old dusty trail. Where do you guys see as potential? And let's say he's not retiring. Let's say he's actually going somewhere. Where do you think he might end up, or who's in the mix there?
Batum. Based on what he did and how teams, if they are bringing him in, saw what he was able to do, I wonder if how much they like the West Coast that he decides to go back somewhere out there. Team specific, I can't say it's the Clippers anymore, and I don't know that it's the Lakers. Would a team like maybe someone like Phoenix potentially? Even though Royce O'Neal's reportedly going back 4 years,
it's just there's no real
million.
money there, which is why I'm like,
that's a good question. There's no room in Denver because of
maybe
what they
Orlando can give them a little bit of
have.
a bump. Let's say that if they get KCP, and
are you looking at this starter role or just role where he can play? Because OKC,
just a prominent role.
OKC has money. And
he would fit in perfectly with what they do there. Other than, I mean, he's not much of a threat to take guys off the dribble anymore. But if you're just talking about quick decision making, space the floor, play 5-out basketball, we've obviously seen Batum can certainly do that. So I would like them. I don't know that his family wants to be in OKC, so I would look more to
the coasts.
But
I would assume every veteran at the end of their career wants to play in LA or California.
Is this a ding?
I think this is a ding.
Shams Charania, with cap space teams, Orlando focused on wing free agents and Utah focused on current roster decisions. Knicks working hard to unhard cap. Somebody get Shams a tweeter for today while he's on this show. Sources say the OKC Thunder are in Oregon to meet with Isaiah Hartenstein.
Well, I predicted the New York Knicks. What we did, you said OKC. So based on the conversations, that's obviously.
Listen, you don't win the race until you cross the finish line. So
but again, putting pressure on New York to really make something happen. If you're going to do something, if you're going to get rid of Mitchell Robinson, get rid of him so you can bring him back into the fold there in New York, because you wouldn't want to break that up. And you can go and keep Mitchell Robinson, bring someone like Andre Drummond in as a backup center, but everything that they had working there, you don't want to mess with that. You really don't want to mess with that. Speaking of the Jazz, as you bring that up, there was a report earlier about Paul George.
Yeah.
And the fact that Danny Ainge, they were looking at Mikal Bridges before the trade happened with the Brooklyn Nets. Didn't work out. He didn't go out there. So with that, it has people believing that could Utah now be in that type of conversation to go and acquire, if they were going after Kale, to look at Paul George to team up with Lowry Markkanen.
Has anyone ever tweeted unhard cap before? Hold on.
Your priorities are really in order over there today, Derek.
Honestly, I just did a Twitter search for it, and it once back in 2023. It's amazing. We are breaking new ground on NBA free agency day.
So, yeah, I mean, look, I think if you wanted to be real cynical, this could be a classic Danny Ainge moment of like, well, he really wanted to do this. Like, he really wanted to trade for Paul George and Jimmy Butler on the Celtics. Remember when that happened back in the day? So if I want to put my Danny Ainge hater hat on, it could be something along those lines. But I do think that this reporting tracks with the idea of they don't want to trade Markkanen. They would like to build a high-level team around him and other high-level players sooner rather than later if they can. But once Bridges goes off the board and you look around the landscape, they know in Utah they're not a free agent hotbed, right?
Yes,
like they have
to get
to go and get guys, and they have to put together a nucleus that is strong enough to say to Mikal Bridges, to Paul George, like, hey, you want to come here. You're going to want to commit to this situation in this market. And that's, so I'm not shocked if that is true. It doesn't appear now that they have any chance of pulling it off.
Yeah, and with the Paul George piece, if you guys missed it, Sean Cunningham talking about the Kings a little bit earlier. Kyle was reading it off the tweet about the Kings having some interest maybe in acquiring Brandon Ingram. If Paul George takes a while, and this is a guy that we focus on a lot as a backup plan, if you will, for the 76ers, we do. Not necessarily. We don't know what's going on in the front office, but we talk about that. This is the waiting game that we talk about possibly missing out on people if you wait for that one guy.
Now, nobody's tampering in Adam Silver's NBA, so it doesn't look like they're missing out on much of anything.
So, Devon, what you're saying is you don't know what will happen if the Sixers un-PG themselves.
Un-PG themselves, yes.
Unhard cap.
Yeah.
We do have another piece.
What would happen?
Of information from Brian Windhorst on ESPN's NBA coverage right now, who says, quote, when they signed Kawhi to that deal, they never told Paul George about it. Wow. Paul George found out about it when the rest of the world found out about it. So there's been some posturing in the last few days of, hey, that relationship between Paul and the Clippers is in good standing.
Yeah.
I have said on this show a couple times, it's never, ever, ever discount the personal relationship politics of the NBA. When you get up to this star level, it is not even so much about that dollar amount and, hey, I'm making, $200 million, $180 million, whatever it is. It is more about when you are a max player and in your head, you, your agent, your family believe you are a max player, and then you are treated as less than that. You are treated as an afterthought. And the other guy, the guy who came to the Clippers in part because you said, I'll force a trade there and come with you, to be treated as an afterthought is something that I guarantee you did not sit right with Paul George. That's why we're sitting here today talking about him potentially coming to Philadelphia.
Interesting. Very interesting. As we keep this going,
I need some fucking news. What's going on here?
Well,
you can't care this much about second round picks.
Adam Silver ruined everything. He cares about tampering, and now we're screwed.
He ruined free agency.
Come
what
on.
are you doing?
One thing that
you big bald fraud.
Sixer fans always want to hear about this one. Kyle, you were talking about this a little bit on Twitter. You sent it to us because we didn't see it. The Brooklyn Nets looking to try to trade Ben Simmons potentially.
Ni hao.
Let's get to some super chats, Bree.
Honestly, I don't know if we could get copyright infringement. There's a video from one of it's like the Chinese New Year night I think it was in Brooklyn, and it's someone who speaks Mandarin, I believe, announcing Ben Simmons in Chinese.
Yeah.
And, maybe there's room on the Guangdong Tigers.
I did see an image circulating today.
I'm not going to try to imitate I could actually get in trouble for that. It's very funny though.
I don't know what this super chat is about. Maybe since it was maybe a while ago, I don't remember where it came from Nick D. 48.
Oh, actually, 18. I did see at some point, because this was early on in the show. To your point, they asked specifically for Derek to read this.
Oh, okay.
Later on,
Nick,
the very top one from Nick
there's
D.
no chance. I'm blind as a bat.
He says passionate.
Oh, the old saying, intense proud. Yeah,
yes,
I did see that one earlier.
So read it. From Nick D, 4818 says,
passionate, intense, proud.
He has another one. Run with us. All the Sixers slogans from back in the day.
What is your favorite one? What was the most ridiculous one?
The most ridiculous one.
It starts now. What team was that?
It's better than Coos Crease for the Celtics. Remember that?
Yeah, the CS cry.
What was the one Lou Williams? Was it Show You Love? That was
Show You Love was a good one.
See, I didn't mind that one.
No, that was a good one.
No, I was asking what your least favorite.
The least favorite. That was like 7 years of those. So let me think of. That's a great question. I don't know. I have to think. We might have to come back to that one.
Show You Love. Topic. We have a lot of super chats. We're going to have to get
Brian Pumper. I'm 2 days into college and 3 lectures behind as it comes to the free agent conversation. Well, Brian, I hope we got you
Or
caught
maybe
up
that's
a little
literal
bit.
and he's actually behind.
Yeah. So hopefully
his
we got
summer
you caught up a
courses.
little bit. Let go of my ego. Wow, look at that. Let go of my ego. That is a pretty good one. There's this guy. Let's call him Colin. He said he wants to be mine. What's that from, Bree? Let us know. I wouldn't have known that one, yeah.
Okay, maybe we should just talk about him and all that for a second. Again, I'm going to reiterate what I said the other day. Anyone complaining about a 19-year-old making TikToks, you are old. I am old. You're just old. You are not the audience. He's got, what, 3 million followers on that platform? Clearly those people are like, man, this guy's on to something. I don't do TikTok. I'll do the Jadakiss. I don't do Instagram. I do Twitter. This is what I do.
This is always the dumbest shit ever because it happened with Matisse and like photography and vlogging. Like a guy can't have interests outside of basketball.
Only if you're in the bubble. That's the only time it was acceptable for him. Just in the bubble.
I think it was always fine.
No, not for me. I mean, for everybody where it was okay.
But here's the difference. You can't be a travel vlogger and suck as a jump shooter that bad.
No, but I'm mad because he sucked as a jump shooter, not because he had a camera and enjoyed using it.
It was fine in the bubble. It was all good. Look, I don't care if as long as Jared McCain can play basketball, and after they win a game, they
just
want
go
to
out
put
there
him
and
on
hoop, brother, and then hit him with the floss right afterwards.
The TikToks will work itself out after a W, man. But I did get somebody to say, can you imagine if he goes 1 for 8 with 4 points and 6 turnovers in a game and he wants to go TikTok after the game? People are going to be pissed off, and that will be something. We know that's going to be something, but we'll let that play out when it happens and all that.
The other one, which is the one that really kills me, all the specifically the men who are like, oh, he paints his nails. I don't like this guy. What the fuck are you worried about some other guy's nails for,
you will
brother?
Properly get me pissed off if you bring that up in the chat.
Who cares?
Yes.
And did anybody say...
Worry about your own nails.
Did anybody... Bree and I were talking about this.
Why don't you clip your fingernails for once? How about
that? That is one. Go get a manicure. Did anybody notice Kelly Oubre's painted nails last season? No,
because he's got aura, as the kids would say.
No one said a thing. Michael Belfatti, I have to pace myself here tonight. Can you guys address what a PG, JE, TM team needs in addition in case it happens? So Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, the team needs thereafter.
Yeah. Thank you for figuring out the acronyms for me.
No problem.
Appreciate that.
It's better than the Merce and Me and the tiramisu.
Tiramisu.
That's a classic. That's why we run with it. So what does the team look like around those
defenders and shooters? That's why KCP. And you would love to have another creator.
Yes.
Which is, I know where Kyle was going to go. It's going to be tough to find that with what you have to trade. But you need shooters and defenders at a minimum.
Yeah. So obviously agree with Derek. If you're going to compromise on something, my guess is it's going to be creation, because they're going to say we are going to live and die with Joel Embiid, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey dribbling and initiating the offense. I do think, despite that, you want to focus first and foremost on just two-way players, guys who can shoot, guys who can switch, guys who can defend their position. I do want somebody who can actually dribble on this roster. I do think it's a little bit compounded by the fact that their first round pick is a 6'2" guard whose handle
doesn't really create.
I am not inspired by. But now the flip side of that, a bench lineup, a second unit that features a lineup that has McCain, Paul George, and Joel Embiid. I don't really care that Jared McCain can't dribble, because you're running everything else through Joel and PG. And then Jared McCain can just, bounce around the perimeter, taking catch and shoot jumpers, relocating, doing that stuff off ball. So, yeah, I would love to have another guy who can really dribble and set people up. I do think one of my main concerns for this core is having enough playmaking in general. Like all three of Joel, Tyrese, and Paul are trying to play make by committee. None of them are primary type playmakers for their team.
We got a minor ding, if you can. This one from Jake Fisher. With Russell Westbrook having opted into his $4 million for the 2024-25 season, the Clippers are now working to find a trade for Westbrook, which is obvious. They didn't want him back. He opted in.
Kyle, he can dribble.
No.
You said
At what cost, Devon? At what cost? That's you remember, and have you seen The Matrix, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
It's the not like this. Not like
not
this.
dribbling like this.
Phone goes dead. Yeah. You've all seen the meme, even if you haven't seen the movie.
I do want to ask this since we talked about Sixers leaving and potential Sixers staying. Tobias Harris. What is his market? We haven't heard much. We might see a team here, team there. Dallas, Utah, Detroit for a while before the front office changed, but we haven't heard much else about him. Orlando possibly for Tobias Harris. Haven't heard much.
Boy, you know what Orlando needs? Another 6'8" guy who can't really dribble and is a reluctant three-point shooter.
Yeah, haven't heard much about him.
I still think Detroit is probably in the market for Tobias. The degree to which they're in the market, we can certainly debate. I do think I'd keep an eye on Utah, just because, as we discussed, if we say Markkanen's not going anywhere, and in that case they want to try to improve the team, you could maybe see something like a 1+1, 2+1 for Tobias, where maybe he's on a lower number than he would like, but he'll have significant opportunities to have the offense run through him there. It'd be him and Markkanen, and they have Keontae George and some other developing guys there, but they're not really the featured pieces in the offense. Derek is like locked in over there. I'm worried.
There's a lot going on.
I didn't know if he's going to tell me some bad news.
I
Or
don't
maybe
even
some
know
good
who
news.
you're talking about right now, but that's okay. There's
The
a lot
Utah
going
Jazz
on.
and Tobias Harris.
Well,
So
Jansen has your spot for Ben Simmons. Same for Tobias Harris. Ni hao. Yes.
Shanghai Sharks.
Yeah.
There is a great Photoshop of Ben in the Shanghai Sharks orange jerseys.
I don't know about Shanghai Sharks, though. Did you see Noah Vonleh's sleeping in the hotel lobby? So
no, listen,
maybe not.
I make these jokes not because I don't have ill will against Ben, by the way. I know that there's I can't personally deal with it anymore. Hopefully he gets healthy and figures his stuff out.
Well, but to the Kale trade, potentially Utah looking at him to team up with Markkanen. Paul George, we just talked about him with Danny Ainge. Maybe to your point, they do look for a guy that is 6'6" and above to at least place in that starting lineup, potentially next to Lowry, Markkanen. And then you're looking at a veteran that will come in there where they do have some young players on that roster as well.
Now, it also, the trade market, Brandon Ingram, for example, we have a chatter. Bino said, well, he uses a different name for Tobias that I won't say here, but suggested Sacramento as a potential landing spot. And clearly they're trying to upgrade like wing forward.
But every time
I would not love Tobias there, but if they're just of the mindset that we'll take an imperfect fit, maybe Sacramento.
Every time
I keep a closer eye
though.
on Utah, Detroit.
Do you think he gets more than the mid-level? I'm not sure.
And what's that number again?
12.8?
No, I don't think so.
I think in a scenario where it's like a 1-1, maybe.
If it's Detroit, I say yes. Utah, I would say no.
Detroit just wants respectability, man.
Yeah, so I would say
I think
yes
they're
in that
willing
case.
to
Like
get a
2
little
years,
froggy.
20 or 2 years, 40, something like that.
Have we seen that already?
The hard part is
only 2 years is a
we don't really know what Trajan
I meant
Langdon.
40 total, not 40.
No,
per
I know.
year. Yeah,
I know 20 annually.
We don't really know what Trajan Langdon prioritizes quite yet as
that's a fair
a
point.
lead guy, and so it's hard for me to sit here and be like, oh yeah, he's definitely in for him. Now, the Pistons draft felt like it was just an extension of the Weaves. We like Ron Holland. I think he's an interesting guy, but that seems like an absolute disaster.
When you bring up Tobias Harris, though, what Bino is saying to Sacramento, every time we hear Tobias Harris, though, to Sacramento is because they were getting rid of
Barnes?
Harrison Barnes. So something gives there, I would imagine, because he's not playing in front of Keegan Murray. And I would think that would mean something about Harrison Barnes. Doesn't necessarily have to be here. Would there be a sign and trade potential with Tobias Harris if he was desperate enough for the money to work out the way he really wanted it?
Okay. Shams
Basically
reaffirmed
backed up Jake's
the
report.
Russell Westbrook
Yep.
reporting from Jake Fisher. So good job by Jake.
Are there any sign and trade possibilities for the Sixers and Tobias Harris?
I can't imagine.
I mean, is anybody that's willing to sign Tobias?
We just said we weren't sure he's going to get more than the mid-level.
Yeah.
So if they're not willing to give him real money, then I can't imagine they're willing
Throwing
to
all
give.
scenarios out there, man.
No, I hear you. Look, and to be clear, we have a lot of people tuned in right now. I almost want to apologize a little bit. We expected news to happen during this hour.
Well, that's what happens free agency.
We can't control
601.
that, obviously. Adam Silver, thank you for decreasing our show.
You're ruining my life, Adam.
I didn't expect to be talking about Tobias Harris signing trades, but it's fair for Devon to bring up because, quite frankly, nothing's happened.
Luke Cornett,
But
1
things
year
might
back
happen.
to Boston.
Meanwhile, you've got Spike Eskin tweeting like every old move from the past 3 years, and that's like the most interesting part of the night.
Well,
No. Luke Cornett, man.
that's it.
Come on.
Luke Cornett
Cornett.
and James Harden, 2 for 70, going back to the LA Clippers. Canoli
Adam
says,
Silver, I'll see you in hell.
can Jared
Yes.
McCain be traded yet? In parentheses, contractually.
Yes,
Yeah.
until he signs that contract.
So,
And then it's
2 months. Yep.
Yes.
so he could potentially be in, if
He could
let's
be
say
in any
deal happens, he could be in that
K
deal.
Hack brought up "Together We Build" for the
Yeah.
old Sixers slogan.
Oh, that's
so
a
that's
good
one
one.
we were not.
What year
thinking
was
of.
that?
Yeah, that's a good one.
I mean, I think it was during.
That
was
was
early.
Iguodala, right?
Yeah.
That was the Iguodala years?
I don't
No,
remember.
I thought that was like right when they
started.
Oh,
with
was
the
it?
process.
That would make sense.
With Nerlens.
Yeah, it was 2013. Yeah.
All right. Damon says, how would we have cap space wise for Paul George and KCP? We talked about it a
We
little
did
bit
talk
earlier.
about this at length, but Derek, do you want to give the abridged version?
So this is with Ingram and KCP?
No,
Paul
PG and
George.
KCP.
Yeah, it would have to be a sign and trade. And even then, it would be tough to make work, in large part because when you receive a player in a sign and trade, you become hard capped at the $178 million salary cap apron. So these Sixers would not be able to go above that threshold. Once you give, it might sound like, because the Sixers are at like 80-something million, it might sound tough to get there, but you give Paul George 50, you give Tyrese Maxey the 35, like it is going to add up quickly. You then throw in another 15 to 20 for KCP. That's where the concern comes in. And also then you have to find a sign and trade deal, which would include both signing KCP and the Sixers having to sign somebody else, one of their free agents with a low cap hold. There's a lot of moving parts. You have to find a trade that would work out. After that, you would then be hard capped at the first apron. A lot of things to overcome, but it is theoretically possible.
All right. Let's go to another super chat because we have a ton of them. To get to UK Birds fan 01. What's up, guys? Thank you for the show. Thank you, UK. Do you think Oubre is gone if we sign Paul George? I hope we keep Oubre.
I think
say probably.
Oubre is dependent on a lot of things.
I would say Batum, if he's really not back with the Sixers, that helps Oubre's case.
Yes.
Because there's, again, a lot of these scenarios, the Sixers may not have cap space or after Paul George and let's say a KCP, or they may want to pursue somebody else with that cap space. Then you would have that room mid-level to bring back your own players. Not having Batum to worry about would help
I'm worried
Oubre's
about him
chances.
still.
Yeah, in terms of using that room mid-level.
I have not gotten the hard.
I have not
they're out
gotten
on Batum yet,
any
by the way.
confirmation yet
So,
either, correct. I would be surprised if this is the Sixers being out on Batum. It would be more so Batum going in a different direction.
yes.
We will see whether or not that is eventually verified.
I didn't expect this one today, though. This is not bellworthy or anything. This is just more of during the season content that we have fun with. The Marcus Morris moment of the night, where I saw something that said the odds are that he returns to Philadelphia with the.
What was that? Oh, do you have
Shams saying
Is it a
what-
bell?
A little bit. It's speculation. But yeah. Well, Shams saying that one team showing a level of interest in Westbrook is the Denver Nuggets.
So
I can see that with Reggie Jackson leaving. I could see
Speaking
now outside
of-
of the shooting.
Well,
I can see that.
outside
Tony
of that, Miss
Jones,
Lincoln.
Tony Jones, who I believe he's based out of Utah now.
Yes.
He covers the Jazz. He said league sources have indicated Westbrook has interest in playing in Denver. So
I could see that. I can see that.
there you go.
See how, hey folks, see how they just went past the Marcus Morris moment of the day.
Yeah, we should. More important, bigger fish to fry right now. Maybe with Paul George, who is a fisherman himself.
50, and Luke Cornett is the breaking news. Marcus Smart.
That's not true. James Harden
can get a shout out here.
James Harden's deal was a bigger deal than Luke Cornett.
Of course. We can get a Marcus Morris moment in there as we talk. Let's
Shout out to Philadelphia native
Citizen X. You guys have a good show. Hit the like button, everybody. Thank you, Citizen X.
Thank you for doing my job for me, Citizen X.
We'll get to that a little bit later. Brian Pumper here. I guess it comes with the territory, but Paul George takes 100%.
Smothered
2K jumpers. And he has some of the most horrific turnovers, but we're used to that. Well, contested
he is not
jumpers,
a perfect player.
No, contested jumpers. We got those numbers a little bit earlier. He can make some tough shots. A little help out with the closing.
Because we're used to something doesn't mean we can't aim for a better life. We don't need to go down that road.
All right. Shahid also says Paul George will age like a millennial. He doesn't have those Hennessy mileage like Allen Iverson back in the day. That's true. I mean, he is still playing at an all-star level.
He was, I mean, if you buy into any of the advanced metrics.
Oh, he's a top 20 player.
He's a top 20 NBA player last season. And maybe this is a good time, since it's a little bit of a lull here in the free agency news, to discuss one of the big concerns people have are the allegations about Paul George as a playoff guy and his reputation on that front. Where are you guys at on, let's use the name, Playoff P?
Because he gave it to himself. Yeah. I think a lot of these, has he struggled in years? Sure. But when you're completely changing roles and asking him to be a third option, mostly off ball, mostly as I think we can overstate at times the certainty we have over playoff performances. And I think, look, that Clippers team has struggled. Like, whatever they want. 3 series in the 5 years they've been together. Some of that comes down to Paul not playing well. Some of that comes down to availability. A lot of that comes down to availability. Some of that comes down to the depth around them. When you have years and years and years of teams not meeting expectations, you're going to have that reputation. Do I think that means he can't succeed in the new role in Philadelphia alongside Embiid and Maxey? No, I think he can. I do think that sports fans can at times overstate knowing what's going on in someone's head and knowing that they can assess how players react to adverse situations. But I also think just because it's tough to maybe measure that, it's really important. So do I worry a little bit that maybe Paul George doesn't react in those kind of situations like you would want? Yeah, I worry a little bit. But again, I go back to he would have such a different role here that the role that he's in, I think there's a chance he can succeed in and succeed at a high level.
So seeing him, again, the thing that we talk about is making fun of course, the nickname in Playoff P and how that just simply has not worked out for him. You know, when it didn't work out for him, it hasn't worked out for him a lot across the board. But when he really started to burst on the scene in the past, it was going against those Miami Heat teams with LeBron James, the Cleveland Cavaliers with LeBron James, because they were the team that everybody looked to beat. But he was going head to head, putting that team, helping carry that team. And he has some really good supporting cast there with David West and guys that he had on his squad. But he was the leader of that. And that's how he really, really made his name for himself in those playoff moments. Then he goes to OKC, and Kyle brought it up at some point earlier in the week where he really, at one season in the postseason, was really getting after it in the Western Conference playoffs. And yes. I always allude to the time that we were in Phoenix and playing the Clippers in the Western Conference Finals. And he was giving fits. We were worried there for a minute, and we had to take it to a Game 6 in LA to close out the series because of how good he was, and that was with Kawhi Leonard off the floor. So as many that we can point back to poor performances in the postseason, remember those too, because those were good. And that's all you need, because if you expect to win a series, you're going to need all 3 of them. So when you talk about Paul George, yes, how often do the arguments, though, against Joel Embiid lay out the same thing of his poor playoff performances. So they all have to step up in the moment and be at their very best in the postseason to advance to the NBA Finals and have a chance to finally get that long awaited championship that we've been talking about for years. So yes, there are warts in his playoff game, but there are warts across the board, and they're all going to have to come to and get over the hump to get it done together. And there have been enough examples in the postseason in the past with Paul George where he has done some good work.
He has had some incredible moments. I think most players who aren't like Michael Jordan will have
or LeBron,
and even LeBron, people used to get on him early in his career, and I think he's lost 4 out of 10 titles or something like that. Most players who aren't superhuman are going to have a very checkered postseason track record. I think probably a lot of Paul George's successes came early on, maybe with Indy when he had less expectations. But I think his overall body of work, he's had some great moments. He's had some struggles. I think that's probably pretty typical for a player who's all-star, occasional all-NBA, but not top 5, top 10 player.
We got plenty. Let's just keep rolling through these super chats while we're working on some news in the background.
All right, let's just jump. I'm going to jump to Cannoli here. He says, if George leaves the Clippers, do they have cap space to sign KCP?
Nope.
All right.
That's an easy one.
That's an easy one, Holy Cannoli.
The Clippers are, they're pretty stuck. Let's put it that way.
Our buddy Vince Pellegrini, our boss here, our GM. Do you give Paul George a no trade if he signs with the Philadelphia 76ers?
Probably not.
No. You don't need to.
No.
They're not. First of all, I think you'd prefer to go here over Orlando. I don't think the Clippers are making offers, so you don't need to. And no trades aren't given out very often at all. It's not expected, so why would you do it?
Yeah. They're not competing with the team who is on a level playing field, right? They're competing with a team who's already under their offer. Now, Paul George and his agent could certainly ask for that, but I think the Sixers are in a position to say, no.
Yeah.
We went much higher than the other ask. Take this one. And feel good about it.
I'm not even sure that's legal, by the way. I think it might only be in certain situations you can get. I'd have to look into that.
All right, let's go to Richard Fitzwell here in the super chat. Why is KCP talked up so much? Is he that much better than Melton? Would it not cost us Oubre?
First of all, he's got a working back. I like backs.
That's a very important
to keep
feature in his favor.
Backs
that his
good.
back works.
He's taller. He's more proven in the playoffs. Look, when you are a two-way player who can stretch the floor and you're a versatile defender, you're going to have a lot of interest. And again, if we end up talking like KCP in the $20 million a year range, that's starter money. You're not paying him all-star money. You're certainly not paying him star money. You're paying him starter money.
And if you're talking about postseason with Paul George, that guy's performed in the postseason and won 2 championships, and a big part of that.
Yeah. He's been a star role player in multiple different places. That kind of versatility, that kind of two-way play, it's valued. It would be a huge help to the team. It's not like mortgage your future help, but it's a big, if he's a second piece, either to Ingram or to Paul George, that would be a real big ad. Real big.
Again, not to compare everything to Tobias Harris, but as the 5th option in their starting lineup in Denver, he's still getting up more threes a game than Tobias Harris.
Look.
The 5th guy.
Yeah, no, I know, but you're just making me pissed off that we had Tobias Harris for 5 years.
He's taking 4 and 5 threes a game. And actually, this is another point that I think probably gets dismissed because everyone thinks of really good role player for the Lakers, made the jump from Detroit, helps them out there. Really good role player for Denver, helps them out there. Even when he was in Washington for a year and that just basically like a sabbatical year.
Forget about that year.
He was good there. He was shooting 5 threes a game, making 39% of his threes on a team that frankly was pretty directionless at the time.
Is that Beal's team?
I believe that was Beal and Westbrook.
And Westbrook, not John Wall. Okay.
Yeah. So, look, he's a guy that that team was not very good, right? But he still continued to basically hit the numbers on the back of the baseball card, play his brand of basketball. So, KCP is just one of the easiest plug-and-play guys in the league. We've seen that he plays well off of stars. He doesn't have an ego about the attempts, the shots.
Can we get a bell? Tweeted from Andre Drummond's own account. I'm in the mood for a Philly cheesesteak.
Wow. That's a bigger bell than that.
Good on you. Talking about him at the trade deadline, and certainly talking about him a little bit earlier today, that there's a really good chance that yes, that's correct, that he comes back to Philadelphia. So, all right, we got something a little bit there. A little Philly cheesesteak for Andre Drummond. He knows where to go. He's been here before. He knows where to go. All right, well, look, man. Let's go back to another super chat then that we did have that was asking a question. I think it was Holy Cannoli talking about, do you think they trade Paul Reed? If Andre Drummond is in the mood for a cheesesteak.
And they just drafted Adem Bona in the second round.
Do you think they look to trade Paul Reed?
I don't know if you're, all due respect, if you're asking this question, you clearly haven't been listening for the past 3 months. We have been all over this in every which way. None of us think Paul Reed is coming back. It might end up being that he's waived, so you can have that extra $7.2 million or whatever it is in cap space, 7.7, I think, correcting myself. It might end up being that he's traded, so you can take back a player making up the $15 million in salary. But I don't think any of us have ever believed, in large part because their path to maximum flexibility revolves around moving Paul Reed, in large part because they can just get a backup center for cheaper. We have been pretty consistent that we didn't believe Paul Reed would be back. Obviously, if they sign Andre Drummond, that would strengthen that case.
Yeah. Look, to Derek's point, I've brought this up on the show many times. I reported it, talked about it pre-deadline. Oh, hey.
Bing, 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 bing,
wow.
bing, bing.
Hold on. This is a big ding.
That is actually a big ding.
Mike Scotto at HoopSite. The Sixers and free agent center Andre Drummond have agreed to a 2-year, $10+ million deal. Drummond gets a player option year 2, and that is now followed up by Shams Charania. Same language. I would bet you they got it from the same place. Andre Drummond is back.
So
there you go.
Again, when
backup centers, they're tearing up the market right now in free agency frenzy here.
Now that gives and it's an even stronger indication that Paul Reed is out.
But I think that might be an indication that there's not a trade now. I want to rephrase that they might be looking to trade Paul Reed, because if they go that path with the cap space, with Paul George at the max slot, they would have almost exactly $5 million left if they keep Paul Reed on the books. So I wonder if they're planning for the possibility that they might then trade Paul Reed. Like I mentioned earlier in the show, if you trade out Paul Reed's $7.7 million contract, you can get back up to $15 million in return. I wonder if this is an indication that they're going that route.
So
they could also just use cap space. Anything could happen.
As for the player, we know the Sixers were in for him at the deadline. Not only in for him, they believe they had a deal done for Andre Drummond. Mm-hmm. They believe this is an archetype of player that is valuable for this team, especially when you consider that Joel Embiid frequently misses time. Drummond has proven that he can be the NBA equivalent of an innings eater type pitcher, right? He can be a solid option as a starter, very solid option as a backup guy, and more importantly, it gives them the flexibility to play different sorts of players behind Joel, right? So you have Drummond, he's the big, can body up the more traditional centers. There aren't many of them left, but there are some important ones, especially on the teams that are vying for championship contention. Mm-hmm. Then you have an option like Bona or Reed, as Derek said, is more than likely being moved if we're reading into this here. But Bona is the more high speed, rim running, up tempo, athletic shot blocking type that will have issues against the bigger guys, but can maybe pair with Tyrese Maxey as you bring him along. I would assume he also probably spends time in the G League this year. So Drummond gives you the veteran cover that you're looking for. Rebounding, obviously a big strength of his that's been a problem for the Sixers throughout this recent era of basketball. So I like it. Although, so
I'm
Derek,
going to be honest. I don't love it.
I don't love the money.
Yes.
I would say that. I like the player. I was expecting if they brought him back that would be a minimum type situation.
Yes. I like this a lot more on a minimum. And it's not just because $5 million is too much. It's because you only have so many different avenues, so many different basically cap space slots that you can use. Prioritizing it, one of those few slots on a backup center. I was hopeful they could get this done on a minimum contract. I liked it a lot more on a minimum contract. Like Kyle said, with Bona, I like the sort of like scheme diversity, especially on defense. But I'm just going to be honest. I'm not a huge Andre Drummond fan. I think he's pretty overrated. I think he's a bad defender.
Ooh, here we go. Throwing some turds in the punch bowl over there, Bodner.
Again, as a minimum contract, I would have been fine with it as one of your few salary cap slots.
But one of the things you do,
lukewarm
but one of the things you do talk about when you speak about the backup center position and people going nuts about the $8 million that Paul Reed was getting, this is $5 million.
But it comes to the same problem of it's eating into one of your cap slots.
It could be one of the reasons we're hearing about Nick Batum. Yeah, that some of that
I certainly would not prioritize Drummond over Batum.
Well, that's for sure. But yeah, like the player. I like the player more than Derek does, just because.
I agree.
Now, in a playoff setting, I'm not a big Andre Drummond guy.
Right.
I think we've seen that.
So if you're telling me the playoff backup center is not solved,
one of the priorities of backup center is just give Joel breaks and find ways to win games in the regular season because you have to lean on him heavily in the playoffs.
If I'm going to use one of my few salary cap slots, I just want to be confident.
It's
in
a fair concern. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just that there are different viewpoints.
But I know Andre Drummond's a real popular person in the chat and among Sixers fans.
I think it's just more because of the fact that you just want a comparable. You want somebody behind Joel Embiid that can play basketball. You want to see Mo Bamba back out there on the floor. Yes, but people also don't want to see it in regular season when Embiid, as Kyle said, it's some insurance, gets hurt, and you're going back and forth between Mo Bamba and Paul George, and we're saying, you know what, Nick Batum is a better closing center at the 5 because you can't trust either one of them.
Look, if the bar is Mo Bamba, yeah, I like him better than Mo Bamba. Sure, I wanted it on a minimum contract.
Fair.
That's my thing.
Absolutely fair.
Derek, could this have been the biannual?
Do we know what the biannual? I don't think you get a biannual if you're an undercap team.
That's See, this is why I ask you these questions.
That's why everybody should read our diehard articles and sign up, because you learn some things like that from Derek when you sign up to become a diehard member here with us at PHLY. You get an opportunity for some live events that we have as well, where you can join us like we have for our show, our draft show on Wednesday. And getting ready for that, you get T-shirts, you get 20% off from the discount there. You get access to all the writing from Kyle and Derek, Bo Wolf, Zach Berman, Jim Salisbury, Les Bowen, Charlie O'Connor, everybody writing for the site. So make sure you go to allphly.com to sign up, become a diehard member, and have some chats also in the Discord where it's busy. So Derek will be arguing with people in the Discord about Andre Drummond because they're going to come after him. Like
the people are already coming after him.
Already said, "Come on, Derek." I know you don't care.
I really don't care.
That's how you build your team. That's why we love it. But you can read that article about the numbers and why it makes sense or not make sense to add that particular player.
And again, it's not about $5 million over a $2 million cap hit. It's about the salary slot, and you only have so many of them. I would have gone in a different direction than a backup center, especially one who, like I said, I don't have a ton of confidence can play in playoffs, but I understand a lot of people like Drummond. I do think he will be useful in the regular season. We'll see.
Brick, can we get up the Michael Belfati's super chats? He's about the backlog. He says he's up against the backlog here. Much respect. And, of course, a love to the whole PHLY fam. He also says that a little bit earlier he had one just to answer the question. So since you guys haven't really addressed my prior question, which we did earlier, will the PHLY...
I think, anyway, unless there's a lot of super chats flying in today.
Will the PHLY Sixers crowd be excited if they end up with PG and Clay? Paul George and Clay. And the way that will work...
Are we saying us as the crowd? Because I
think it's more...
Yeah, I think
out there.
our position is that we're a lot more excited about Paul George base level than many of the people who
even though
watch
everyone
our show.
in the chat right now thinks I hate everyone, I do agree that we have been more excited about Paul George than most.
I have been preaching for a month and a half, 2 months now, that I think Paul George is a great option given the circumstances here, right? That you sign him for your cap space, you're not losing draft picks, hand in glove fit, skill set wise. I think people should be very excited about Paul George. For anybody who missed the Klay Thompson stuff we were talking about earlier, he's heavily dependent on what does it cost. And given that they seem to be using a salary slot here, Derek, on Drummond, I think Klay looks even more unlikely based on everything that we have heard.
Again, unless it's a sign and trade, but I don't even think the Warriors could do that. So
so Klay at a certain price threshold would have a ton of value and I would be excited to see Klay bomb away here.
And if we're talking about at that like $13 to $15 million price point, I become a lot more interested than I was when it was like 20 to 25 and you're thinking a longer term deal. Here's what I'll say about Drummond, which isn't about Drummond at all. If they're acting on this level of moves, I wonder if they feel really confident about Paul George.
Yep. Good point.
For this to be locked in,
because if you were thinking you need to pivot to, let's say, Brandon Ingram and KCP, you don't make this move now. I don't think.
Well, as we know, Derek, there's no tampering in the NBA, certainly not by the Sixers.
Zero.
So I think they only did this because they think Andre Drummond's the greatest backup center of all time.
He is the greatest backup center of all time. Is he?
No,
let's think
definitely
about that.
not.
No, I know. I'm just saying, let's think about that. It's been a long show. This is the PHLY.
I will also say, like, of the backup centers they've had, Mo Bamba.
That's why people like it so much.
No, I know that, but I think his defense is more exploitable in the playoffs. That's my one main
His
thing.
great skill is rebounding and able to take up minutes for Joel Embiid.
Yes.
That's it. That's his
if I'm gonna use that salary slot, I want it solved for the playoffs. That's my whole thing.
Yes. You're listening to the PHLY Sixers free agency frenzy show here on this Sunday. We're going
I keep laughing seeing that frenzy when it's like, hey, they made one move and nobody's really doing anything.
That's why I'm emphasizing frenzy, man. Presented by our good friends from Rothman Orthopedics. As Derek and I sip on our water here, we have I
might need to go get a water at some point.
Our Rothman Orthopedics, my mug, his cup. Kyle has the hat on. So presented by our good friends from Rothman Orthopedics here with you today. So far, the big moves. Let's start off with James Harden, 2 years, $70 million. Andre Drummond with the Sixers, telling everybody he's up for a cheesesteak, returning. It has been reported since. Michael Scotto, 2 years, $10 million for Andre Drummond. And Luke Cornett, 1 year deal as well. Kevin Love, 2 years, $8 million to return to Miami after he opted out of his last year of his deal. And the other move was Omer Yurtseven.
Oh, we have some breaking news.
This is bellworthy, folks.
Kevin Porter Jr., 2-year deal with the Los Angeles Clippers. Given our position on, let's say, NBA caliber players who have had transgressions of this nature off the floor, I'm happy we do not have to go down that rabbit hole again. We'll see, I guess, how that turns out for Kevin Porter Jr.
Los Angeles is an interesting spot for him. And I mean the city, knowing the background that he
I'm
has.
actually pretty shocked that he got a straight up NBA deal right out the chute.
Yep.
I'm curious how much of it is guaranteed.
That'll be
some
big
incentives in there. By the way, I mean, Kiersey from Indiana at the time, she got cut by the Sky in the WNBA. So she's now on the market. She's now dating Jaylen Brown, by the way. All right, let's go to another super chat here. And Jacob checking in. How will Joel Embiid react to the Sixers making a move that is potentially making his life easier instead of the usual harder?
Well, Jacob, I'm pretty sure he would like it.
Pretty much.
I think Joel would give you the big thumbs up.
And they've had some that have made his life. J.J. Redick, Seth Curry trading for him. Of course, the Jimmy Butler move. They've made moves that have helped him out.
Here's what I'll say.
It is different now that he's good enough and the team has real expectations to win.
Yeah, and he also really likes shooting. Like everyone they get, he's like, can you please just shoot the ball every time you're open? So if they get a guy who shoots the ball every time he's open, he's going to be pretty excited about that.
And with Andre Drummond coming back and Derek speaking about the shooting around Joel Embiid, him liking it, Seth Curry was waived by the Charlotte Hornets, and a lot of people on social media right away, Sixer fans wise, was saying, bring him back. Do you bring him back?
I thought so. Was the reporting there that they were going to look to keep him in Charlotte? It was more a matter of.
I didn't see that part.
So there have been I'm trying to remember who tweeted this. Apologies to whoever had said this. But the tweets leading into free agency from some of the big reporters have been essentially the equivalent of someone saying, oh, my girlfriend is not picking up my option, but she'll consider getting back together with me. Right. That there have been a lot of these. They've declined the team option, but they're open to a future relationship.
I saw
that's
that
not exactly
times.
the strongest endorsement.
I saw that with Joe Ingles and Mo Wagner for the Orlando Magic,
Yeah.
that language. But would you have interest in Seth Curry on I guess, a minimum at that?
No more small guys.
Yeah.
You just drafted a small shooter.
I agree,
Like,
100%.
develop
No more
him, see
small
if he
guys.
can hit. Like, you don't,
If you're not taller than me, you don't get to play on the Sixers roster. How about that?
outside of Tyrese Maxey.
Well, I'm saying the
New
rest
guys,
of
new
the
guys,
guys.
yeah.
And I actually, Tyrese and I would have to go back to back. I'm not
It's
sure.
close.
It's definitely close. But yeah, anybody
Kyle's
who.
a legit 6'3", by the way. 6'3" in shoes, but like a legit 6'3".
Yeah, anybody who's not taller than me the rest of the summer, you're not getting a meeting with the Sixers if I'm running the team. This is like old school. Rest in peace and shout out to Jerry West. I feel like this is like old school Jerry West mentality. Like, get me big dudes, big athletic guys. That's who I want on the roster.
Big dudes. Big dudes.
Or the Chip Kelly, big people beat up little people.
Little people.
So I wonder if
That's good.
just because it's 2
Classic.
years, I wonder if the Drummond is going to end up being a part of the room mid level. And again, the room mid level,
And they're splitting it between
the room mid
couple
level
guys.
is $8 million for up to 2 years in length. You can split that among multiple contracts. So theoretically, this could be part of it. And the fact that it is 2 years makes me wonder. But that would only leave $3 million left, and I wonder what they would then intend to use that $3 million for.
Lowry.
Could be.
You sign Paul George.
But that would be tough to then bring back Kelly.
Then so it'd be Paul George, priority one.
And again, now all of you people who yelled at me for not loving Drummond, what if he cost you Kelly? Are you going to be on board?
Drummond
And this
plus
is my
Lowry.
thing. It's
and
not
then
like
cap space on whoever.
people want to boil it down to like, oh, I like Drummond or oh, I hate Drummond. No, it's opportunity. Do you like Drummond over the other options? And I'm not sure. It depends how it shakes out. I'm not sure I do. And again, ask yourself the hypothetical. If Drummond costs you Kelly Oubre, are you still on board? Because that's a mental calculus you have to do.
Mark Stein was saying that, to your point, that it looks like they're officially using him in the cap space. Expected to use the cap space before officially signing.
That means that he would have to be the room mid-level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. More super chats. We got Rocco in there. Rock, haven't talked to Rock in a while. It's been a while. What up, Rock? Can you explain how Paul Reed's contract can be used to add cap space? Wondering if using his contract allows you to talk to KCP and the sign and trade or anyone else. And we talked about that a little bit earlier.
Yeah. So again, just to recap, there's two ways the Sixers can use Paul Reed's contract. I mean, outside of Paul Reed being on the roster, but nobody believes that's going to happen. Outside of Daryl Morey when he's in the spin zone at press conferences. Moving on from that, you can either cut him and get an extra $7.7 million in cap space, or you can trade him, and because of the rules for teams under the apron, you can take back a player who makes up to $7.5 million more than Paul Reed, which would put them a little over $15 million. So that is the way. Basically, you use the remainder of your cap space, you wait, you trade Paul Reed, and you can take back up to $15 million.
Okay.
And that can be from a
calculated.
Player. That can be from a player who is maybe a sign-in trade. So that would be used to get a free agent.
We need like a Bodner sticker that says the calculator.
The
stamp on the bottom of the screen.
I'm sorry that I'm good with numbers.
No, this is not this. I need you.
That is perfect.
You are my lifeline in these times. That's the whole point.
I think I'm gonna read that on the plane when we go up. Let me tighten up on the numbers here from calculator as we get ready for the summer league. Daniel here says
I'm gonna need the calculator to figure out how much money I can afford to lose at the craps table in Vegas.
That'll be a couple weeks from now, buddy.
How we feel about Bol or adding Sadiq for the Sixers, since Sadiq was waived by the Atlanta Hawks towards ACL.
No
in March.
interest in Bol. Sadiq Bey, I would. So he will miss, presumably, if not the whole year, most of the year. He was injured in late March.
Yeah.
Torn ACL.
You're talking March, April.
Yeah. So I would only take Sadiq Bey as a minimum end of the roster flyer. I am not using any cap space to sign him. Now, maybe if you really wanted to be creative with that room, Derek, you use hey, we'll give you the room. But I feel like Sadiq Bey will have a better market than, even with the injury, somebody will say, we'll pay you for 2 or 3 years maybe. Although I don't know. The Hawks waiving him was a bit of a surprise for me. I am personally not a Sadiq Bey guy. I think he's a 3-and-D player in name only.
Yes.
And I thought he's
nowhere. The defense part is nowhere near true.
And he's basically a league average shooter.
Yep.
He's up and down. He didn't even have a season. He had a 25-game stretch with Atlanta where he shot 40% from three. For his career, he's 35.2% from three. He is just right about average.
He did drop 50 in a game.
Yeah.
He's no Malachi Flynn, who was also waived by Detroit. Evan Fournier let go by Detroit off of the $18 million. I don't know that he's
never Google.
Yes.
Evan never Google Fournier.
He's not going to get 18 on the open market. Would you look at him as a shooter, as we talk about shooting that they need around Joel Embiid? And size, it's not a small guard like Seth Curry.
For shooting,
and he's also has legs underneath him because he hasn't played in like a year and a half.
A lot of it depends on what does the rest of the roster look like? Like, who else are you getting?
I just simply mean interest.
They will have a lot of minimum guys on the roster. So you're not, every single one of them is not going to be, hey, you're a 3-and-D player, you're a two-way guy. Some of them are going to be specialist players. So I wouldn't write it off entirely, but he's a guy I don't want in the playoff rotation. So
I think he might be cooked. I'm not. Yeah. I mean, look, minimums are whatever, but I say minimums are whatever. But let's say they execute some of these moves, especially a move like trading Paul Reed for a player who makes more than him. You become hard capped at $178 million. You start missing on some of these minimum contracts. It sounds stupid. Those minimum contracts can add up, especially if you keep them on the roster for a long time. So you do have to be a little more targeted than maybe you were in previous years.
Aaron. What up, Aaron? We have an opening for a French player. If you,
we need a ding. According to Jeff Zilgett, my former colleague at USA Today, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is leaving the Nuggets and headed to the Orlando Magic on a 3-year deal.
Wow. We don't have money on that yet?
Wow. I do not.
Prediction, $75 million.
Sounds like about right.
Number. 3 for 75.
That's why when people were talking about
that's just a prediction. I don't know that.
That's a good number though.
Jeff Zilgett.
But Morton, look, that's a blow. But you know why that's a good move? That was the Sixers' primary threat to sign Paul George outside of the Clippers.
That ain't happening now.
Good one.
Unless he's really gonna, unless the Clippers step up, this sounds like it's pretty close.
Maybe moving toward the finish line.
Maybe not. Was it the deal zone? What was the Windhurst?
It was the
thing?
deal zone. Yeah.
Maybe not write it in Sharpie.
Get in the zone. Yeah. Deal zone.
But we're getting, maybe pencil. Maybe it might be pencil.
All right, that's an interesting one. Okay, KCP. You guys had him in your predictions, possibly coming here.
Well, but that was when we had Brandon Ingram. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
By the way, Jeff Z had one of the best moments for any reporter in recent history he was ill at one point in recent years, right? And still in recovery, I believe, but made a recovery.
Yes.
And then came back, and LeBron saw him at a presser and was extraordinarily excited to see him. I hope one day.
Look, I know everyone says this about everyone, but I had a chance to work with him at USA Today when I covered the draft for him. One of the best people in the industry I've ever met. Not even close.
Don't know him, but have heard similar from Derek, whose opinion I value quite a bit, but also from other people. So shout out to Jeff for that breaking news. Penetrated through the big boys in the reporting game, right? So listen, he's a plugged-in guy himself. I don't mean to diminish his importance.
More super chats here on our free agency frenzy. As we starting to get some names now, the frenzy, Kyle, is real. We're starting to ring the bell a little bit more in here. Philly 007, do the Sixers
ring that bell, brother?
Have the ability to trade for Marcus Smart? If so, would he be a good fit besides Maxey?
I mean,
okay.
Numbers.
Ding, ding.
Numbers for Contagious.
I overshot it a little bit.
66. That's a good
3
chunk.
years, $66 million for Caldwell Pope. That is according to all three of Woj, Shams, and Haynes. Woj was first.
It's right around that number, though, that you were talking about with that 20, 21 right there.
See, and yeah, if it's 66, it probably started right around 20. Like, I don't know if there was a world they could have done that, but that would have been really interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
But again, I think once you get away from the sting of like, the Sixers aren't getting KCP, I'm pretty sure this takes Orlando out of the running for Paul George. So that's more important.
Good news for the Sixers.
Yeah.
Yes. Marcus Smart.
So Marcus Smart is again, I wish I could remember who to credit on this one. I did hear one of the other on a podcast at some point this week that Marcus Smart was a name to keep an eye on, that a lot of contending types have been sniffing around him, that perhaps Memphis would be willing to move on from him. Frankly, would be pretty shocking to me they gave up a decent amount to get him.
Yeah.
And he missed last season in a lost season. So I don't know how the thesis of that initial trade changed so much between now and last summer. Now maybe that they've drafted Zach Edey with the top 10 pick, they're like, the questionable shooting, I don't know. But some interest. What is his contract at? Derek, do you know that off the top of your head, what Marcus Smart is making? Exactly.
No, I don't know.
I think he's on a 5 for 90, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so he's $20.2 million this season, 21.5 next year, and then there are no options on that contract. So he's an unrestricted free agent in 2026. So he is right in that same range as the salary KCP just got. I don't love the fit just because he's not a great shooter. He can be a streaky shooter who gets hot. He is. He may be the most confident bad shooter in the entire NBA. And I love the demeanor. I love the defensive stuff. He does have a bit of an injury history at this point. Like, some of that is because of how he plays. He runs through his shoes. He will run through the scorer's table. He will run into other human beings. And sometimes that leads to some injuries.
Anything.
So, yeah.
He will run into anything. Yes.
So as much as you can love a former Celtics player in Philadelphia, I love Marcus Smart for what he brings to the table. Do have health and shooting based concerns though. And it would be tough, Derek, because of the salary number, to bring him in here if everything else goes as they're hoping.
I would certainly talk myself into Marcus Smart pretty quickly. We've spent most of this time being like, you can't get more non-shooters to put around Joe. Well, when you have a defensive player of the year caliber person who can defend multiple positions like that, I can talk myself in pretty quickly. I love the way he plays the game. I wish he could shoot. He can't, but he's a useful player for sure.
Costs more than DeAnthony Melton, but a better player than DeAnthony Melton. If you're talking about having him with
the
Joel
defensive
Embiid
impact is
and Paul
much
George.
Third-year player option on Caldwell Pope's deal, by the way. So it could end up being a 2 for 44-ish, or I guess depending on it's whatever the escalation is. But that'll put him back on the market potentially at age, I want to say 33. He's 31 right now, right? So that could give him a chance to get one more multi-year deal from a good multi-year deal from another team. It's good business for him. Yeah, he'll be 32 in February.
More super chats. Ampu Mines says, is there enough cap space for Paul George and Lowry Markkanen?
Yes. Yeah. We talked about this at length yesterday on the show.
On the emergency pod.
If Drummond really is being signed with the room mid-level, that wouldn't impact that. You would just have to do that move after you do the Paul George signing and after you do the market and trade. There's a whole host of reasons why that would be impractical. going from the cost to acquire him, which we don't even know if Danny Ainge would accept. We don't know if the Sixers could outbid the market. And then there would be the cost to keep them. I ran the numbers yesterday, and basically you would have, with just 4 players on a contract next year, or not next year, but the 2025-26 season, you would have about $15 million in space under the second apron to go out and try to get 11 players. It would be borderline impossible. You'd be a second apron team.
You'd
every
be
year.
the Suns right
You'd
now
be the
with
Suns.
one more very good player.
Yes.
Arguably 2 more,
Yeah,
depending on how you feel about Beal.
Brad Beal. Yeah. Should you do it? Look, I love great players. Daryl Morey loves great players.
Breaking news.
And Markkanen would be an incredible fit. It would be real tough, though. It would be real. And I don't even know if it's really realistically possible. My legs are starting to...
I was going to say, I might get up and walk
around.
around. Don't read anything into this, anyone. I'm going to get some water. So if anything happens.
All right. As Kyle exits, and we'll talk about Rocco here. Good to hear from Rock again. Does trading Paul Reed create additional cap space? If so, how much additional cap space does a Paul Reed?
I feel like we
did, but we didn't.
Is this the same question?
Same guy.
So again, waiving him, $7.7 million in additional space to use under the cap. But if you keep him, go over the cap, you can then trade Paul Reed for a player of up to $15 million, give or take a couple $100,000.
Okay.
So those are sort of like the two options. Keep or waive him, gain more cap space, or keep him, go over the cap, use him in a trade for a player up to $15 million.
There you go, Rock. Got you covered, man. All the answers for you. Cameron Ireland says 2.6 in the building. That's right, 2.6K in the building. Smash the likes, everybody. We appreciate you hanging with us. Since we've been here 5 o'clock, things are a little different than we expect. Well, we thought it would be a frenzy, as our show is titled The Free Agency Frenzy. It has not been a frenzy, unlike it has been in the past, but you guys have stuck around with us. We really appreciate it. And you know what, Cam? We're now up to 2.7. So tell a friend to tell a friend so we can get some more in there. Let everybody know things are starting to happen. Nick Batum from Kelly Iko of The Athletic reporting that he is not returning to the Philadelphia 76ers. That's a name that we thought would return as a returning player for the 76ers. Andre Drummond, 2 years, $10 million to return to Philadelphia as the backup to Joel Embiid. So good news there with a name dropping. Kevin Porter Jr., surprising, the Los Angeles Clippers giving him a 2-year deal in L.A. to play for the Clippers.
I am so happy. First of all, I'm a little bit shame on them for signing him. But I'm so happy that we don't have to talk about it.
Yeah, we do not have to talk about that. Luke Cornett, 1-year deal to go back to the Boston Celtics. Staying with the Clippers, former Sixer. James Harden, 2 years, $70 million, so he gets 35. Player option, right, on the second year?
Yes.
That's a player option on the second year. And just dropped Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, according to Jeff Zilgett. 3-year deal to go to the Orlando Magic. So with that one,
$66 million player option on the last one.
So with that one, as Derek and Kyle and myself, we've said already, that looks good for the Philadelphia 76ers, where it takes Orlando off the board. Maybe that meeting doesn't happen anymore with Paul George and the Orlando Magic, because it's now the Sixers and the LA Clippers. So if that is the case, that might bode well for the 76ers and acquiring Paul George here in Philadelphia.
So to be clear, when Kyle gets back, my Rothman mug is almost out of water. I'm going to go get some more water. Don't read anything into it. But then again, if I was leaving to make a phone call, I'd also say not to read anything into it, and I'd lie to you because Derek Bodner is a liar. So we'll see.
I can, if you need to go. I've done this before. You good? You can go.
That's all good.
Yeah.
Nah, I want to leave you by yourself.
Yeah,
That's rude.
right.
That's very, very rude.
Hey,
I'm
man.
not. You think I'm an idiot with basketball, not you, the chat or the viewers. I'm not leaving you here by yourself.
I've done 5-hour shows, man. 6-hour shows. I have
That's
to
true.
do it by myself.
That's true.
I
There's
can
a reason
handle
you got out of that, though.
a couple of minutes and that. So what were you about to say?
What was your question again?
Oh, we were just telling everybody all the news. So let's go to another super
No,
chat.
but you had a question that you specifically asked me. I forget what it was.
Yeah, we've been talking for so long.
It's so long.
Yeah, we've gone from jumping from team to team, player to player. We were just simply talking about KCP and how
I remember talking about
how
KCP.
it looks good for Paul George
Oh,
here
yeah.
with
So
the Orlando Magic.
A little good,
maybe
little
off
bad
the
with
board.
KCP. Bad because that was a potential target for the Sixers, both if they missed out on Paul George and also with the report earlier today that the Sixers were trying to find a way to do basically the cap gymnastics to get KCP with Paul George. I went over those gymnastics a little bit, probably multiple times earlier on in the show. Doesn't really matter now because KCP is going to Orlando, so cross him off the list then. But it does, again, I have to check the math, and it's kind of hard to do some math while I'm sitting here talking to all of you wonderful people. But I believe that crosses Orlando off the list for Paul George. And I think maybe, so besides the fact that it would make that a 2-horse race between the Clippers and the Sixers, perhaps even more notably, I think that probably means Orlando has an inkling of which direction Paul George is going to go, which is good for 2 reasons. First, I think the Sixers are very strongly in the lead. I think I said 70% chance at Paul George earlier today.
You said 75.
I'm going up to 85 right now.
Wow.
I'm pretty confident.
Hot damn!
Might even be 90. Again, I think pessimism is just, there's a pessimism factor going into those odds.
Pessimistic?
I feel really good, though. And if I'm feeling positive, I think you should too. But maybe even more importantly, especially for the people up here on the panel, I think there's a chance this gets resolved tonight.
That's a really good chance.
And that's what I'm rooting for.
Are we going to be here? Why are you doing that?
I don't know. It was only supposed to be a 2-hour show, and we're already 2 hours and 40 minutes into it.
Hey, we can talk, and we got a lot of super chats. Talking about food, speaking of food and cheesesteaks, as Andre Drummond teased that on his social media account. Bill says, where are the good cheesesteak places? Because certain spot for him doesn't kick it. And look, we're not going to call out any cheesesteak places.
Bill, I'm going to say the name. Bill, how dare you disrespect the good people of D'Alessandro's?
Here's what I'll say. As you know, you're in that area a lot. I went to high school in that area, so I've had plenty of sandwiches from that spot there. They're very good. They've always been good. I have my favorites. I have a list of my favorites. And I will say this, the people that hosted us, the Garage Fishtown, Kyle, you asked me about their cheesesteak, how good it was. I had it after we did our show. It was really good.
There you go.
Like, really good.
Shout out Garage Fishtown.
Really good. So we thank you. We appreciate it. So,
but what's your favorite?
My favorite is, I stay neighborhood for my favorite. So I go Winfield Pizza, where I grew up.
Okay.
I will take that ride and go to Winfield Pizza and make sure it's double wrapped. So when I get home, it's still in place and warm. So I'll go Winfield Pizza. Larry's is always one because that's the other part of the neighborhood, right off City Line Avenue. And I like Ishkabibbles on South Street.
They're the king of the chicken cheesesteak for me.
They're very good. Very good.
I think Angelo's is the current favorite for me. In fact, I can't even get my wife to go anywhere else for cheesesteaks if I want one. So it's certainly number one in my household.
That's in the household. And you said, happy wife, happy life.
Happy spouse, happy house.
There you go with that one too. What else do we have? Let's jump to Ash Monroe says, could they trade B-Ball Paul and attach picks as a way of acquiring another legit rotational wing? So acquiring picks with Paul Reed, and that's roughly $7.7 million.
This is where I need the calculator to tell me exactly what the mechanics of. Oh, by the way, here, before we get to this, cap expert that I trust a lot, Yossi Goslin, the Orlando Magic only have about $28 million left in cap space after inking Caldwell Pope to that deal. So the point that was made several times over at this point, they are out of the Paul George business. So that threat is no longer out there. As it pertains to Paul Reed, the big problem there is that there will be ramifications if they take more money back in the trade, I believe. I don't know. Bring Derek back. I'm going to tell you that, Ash. How about that?
All right. We'll get back to that one, Ash, in a little bit. Chris Evans, just joining from Oz. Appreciate it. Quick summary of the night. Well, we laid it out just now. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, 3-year deal, $66 million with the Orlando Magic. Now off the table. 3rd year is a player option. James Harden, 2 years, $70 million. He's returning to the Los Angeles Clippers with the player option on that year number 2 for him. Russell Westbrook, he opted into his deal the other day. I think his was yesterday. He opted back into his deal. Reports now that they are looking to trade him, and some reports have him maybe linked to the Denver Nuggets. Luke Cornett going back to the Boston Celtics on a 1-year deal. Andre Drummond, 2 years, $10 million to Philadelphia. So that's the deal. That's the only deal happening here outside of Nick Batum. Kelly Iko reporting that it doesn't appear that Nick Batum is returning to Philadelphia. Kevin Love, 2 years, $8 million to return to the Miami Heat. And the Sacramento Kings might be peaking at Brandon Ingram, according to Sean Cunningham out west.
Look at that right off the top of your head, Devon.
So is that
like
everything?
A true professional. That's if it's not every. I mean, there's some stuff about meetings, right? So Oklahoma City is in. I think they said Oregon.
Oregon, yeah.
To meet with Isaiah Hartenstein to open free agency. That's a potential big move if that happens, regardless of whether he stays in New York or moves on to a team like the Thunder. So that's out there as well. The other piece of the summary is just that we collectively feel that Paul George to Philadelphia feels like a pretty
really good.
It's pretty close is what I would say. We have confirmed on the show they are meeting with Paul George today in California. And there's a lot of reporting out there from guys like Chris Haynes, as well as some other notable national reporters, that the Clippers feel like more of a long shot at this point. That Chris Haynes characterized it as it would be a Hail Mary. So all signs right now are pointing to Paul George to Philadelphia.
Love it. Love it. This would improve the team. So with that, one of the questions that Real Time asks, with Paul George and Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, what type of style do you see Nick Nurse running with those three players?
First of all, Real Time, it's disarming when you talk to us without making fun of me or Derek in some way. So I'm not sure. Somebody figure out if that's the Real Time with Prince Blue. So I do think it will be closer to what it was with Harden in that it's going to be a lot of slow half court, not necessarily walk it up, but it's not going to be a run and gun type team. And it never was going to be with Joel, but Paul George is not at this point of his career a fly down the floor, attack and transition sort of player. And that's okay, right? Like you can be a slower team. You do want to lean into pace and transition play more with Tyrese Maxey and the lineups that are. I'm about to sneeze, by the way.
That's all right. Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, and
with
Joel
Tyrese
Embiid.
Maxey and the lineups that are built specifically around Tyrese Maxey.
God
so
bless
maybe
you, by
that
the way.
thank you. Maybe that influences how you assemble the lineups, right? We know that the chemistry is already really good with Joel and Tyrese. So maybe you keep that and let Paul George run his own unit. But by the same token, if you're able to get some athletes in here, guys who will run the floor, guys who will space the floor, then maybe you look at it and say, okay, we'll continue to play the slower half court style with Joel and PG spearheading that one group, and then Tyrese can be we're gonna go. You get Bona out there as your run and gun big from time to time. If Ricky Council survives all the roster mechanics here, you have him out there, which, by the way, if they end up in a situation where it's a lot of minimum guys, Ricky's going to have a great chance to try to break into the rotation for real this season,
We
which
need
is
to
great.
talk to him again soon. That'd be catch up with him.
Yes. I mean, hopefully we see Ricky in Vegas when we're out there for Summer League and
So
Team
with
USA.
that, and the Nick Batum news from Kelly Iko, just getting on the Kelly Oubre side, because he was one that we looked at as a potential candidate to return, and we had Nick Batum high, Kelly Oubre potentially getting more money elsewhere, especially if they give the money to Nick Batum. How does that change now? And would that be a fit, including in the starting lineup, if they don't get another forward to play in the front court, a little bigger forward there at that 4 spot to take that Nick Batum role? Could Kelly Oubre play some minutes in the starting role here next to Paul George?
I don't think it would be ideal. I think what you would want to have happen is we're painting in the 3 cornerstones, right? And then what happens from there is a very interesting question, because there are a lot of unknowns right now with, it seems like they could have used part of the room exception on Drummond. We don't know how they're going to use that extra $3 million. how do they use that cap space that's left? So if Kelly Oubre is one of the priorities, let's say they use, I don't know, $6-7 million on Oubre, then yeah, I think there's a very good chance that he starts. I don't have a feel for what his market is.
Yeah.
And maybe more importantly, I don't have a feel for how long he's willing to wait to let the market play out, because last year he waited and waited and waited. I think he believed he was going to get more money, and that's why he ends up on a minimum deal, because eventually you just run out of teams and cap space. Everybody moves on to bigger priority free agents. Maybe Kelly this time around, having learned a lesson from how that played out, says the first or maybe the second good offer I'm taking, whether that's in Philadelphia or elsewhere.
And of course, look, he might have had some, because you are able to speak to your own free agents. He may have had conversations with the Sixers already, the potential that if in fact they do bring in Paul George and what that role would be, what the money might look like, he might be okay waiting. And obviously coming off the Charlotte situation was this time around much better than what people may have seen in Charlotte to only offer him that 1-year deal late in the year when Daryl Morey was able to swoop in there and get him. So he would be interesting. There was a question that we just got there. Who would be? And this is from Bill again. So if the starters are Embiid, Maxey, and Paul George, who are the other 4 and 2? Who are the 2 starters at the power forward spot? And if we're going positionally, power forward and shooting guard, you think Morey will have it to use first-round picks to get that particular player to start in those roles?
Well, Najee Marshall's been a popular name, right? And I do think, so it's worth noting for, I think everyone hears Paul George and they're like, wing. If you're going by how he was slotted the last couple of years, he was basically a 4 for a lot of his minutes. Now, it's a little different when you're playing alongside Kawhi Leonard, right? Like those guys are just kind of interchangeable pieces if you're talking about the defensive stuff. But you could be looking at let's say a smaller guy on the wing next to him, not necessarily like so the Tobias Harris Batum type. So I think they're more 4s. They're technically wings or forwards, but they skew toward 4s. I think you could see like a 2-3 hybrid. And maybe a couple of ideally, I think you go for a couple of those types of guys and you play Paul George as a 4. And that way you're sleek, you're athletic, you hopefully can space the floor and you can run a little bit.
Not really rebounding, though.
Yeah, well, that's
Paul's not a great, Paul George in this instance, not a great rebounder, especially.
Yes. And it's an important balance to strike there, right? It's one of the reasons, frankly, that we talked about McCain and we're skeptical about his fit, because I don't know how often he can play next to Maxey, if ever. So that's more of a long-term concern than this year. I think he'll be almost exclusively in Maxey-less minutes, assuming he sticks around, of course. But yeah, so Najee Marshall is one of the names out there.
Any interest in Caleb Martin, who opted out of his $7 million from Miami?
If he opted out of 7, that feels like he's going to be
looking for 10,
looking for more. Now, again, if you're patient and he hangs there, maybe you end up on a friendlier deal than he's hoping for. But it's really hard to once Paul George
he's holding everything up.
There is going to be, not just in Philadelphia, there will be a flurry of moves that come after that. So
yeah, he's definitely holding.
I'm not trying to string you guys along whatsoever. I'm just cognizant of the fact that, I mean, every insight, like true national level insider, is essentially telling you right now, like, that's the guy holding everything up.
Yeah. Derek, while you were going, Ash did ask us a question that we wanted more clarification from you. Could they trade Paul Reed, as we talked about a little bit earlier, and attach picks as a way of acquiring a legit rotational win?
Sure. That's really, because when we talk about Paul George, great, he lets us keep all of our draft picks, but we really don't have any salary cap space to work with, and we don't have any tradable contracts to send out to match salary. Paul Reed is your one way to match salary. Send him out. Like I said, you can get back up to a $15 million player in return. You can attach draft picks. Yes, absolutely.
So, okay, this is somebody I would have some interest in. I don't know. I don't think he's necessarily a starting 2 level player, but someone we've brought up on previous shows. Gary Harris is a free agent. He's somebody that fits the 2-way bill. Now, he is a bit lacking, or he's up and down as a shooter, but career 37% shooter. He's one of the 3-and-D guys that's not that good at either end of the floor. But if you're using him as a, let's say one of your top 7 or 8, and he's on the lower end of that 8, I feel okay about him. So I would keep an eye on someone like him, depending on what he gets. I certainly think, given their history, Eric Gordon is going to be in play. I don't know what his market will be like, but
what did he turn down? Or it was an option,
it's a 3-point something $1 million option. So I would assume he's looking for more, hoping to get more, but you never know. It could always be about situation. So I'm just.
He had a lot of opportunity there.
Keep an eye on him. I believe, is Taurean Prince a free agent? I don't love him.
Lakers,
I believe he's a free agent, if I remember correctly.
Interesting one, Taurean Prince.
These are guys more in that depth. They're not guys I'm like, I want that guy to start.
Right.
I have a couple of depth pieces where the team did not pick up the option. Luke Kennard, Memphis, they declined his 14.8. And then Precious Achiuwa with the New York Knicks, 6.2, and Nick Nurse relationship there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure Precious fits so much, so I would be surprised if they used resources there. Luke Kennard was injured a lot last year, but overall, I wouldn't. I mean,
skill set is
one of my kinks is shooting, especially around Joel Embiid, and he can definitely do that.
It has decent height to him.
Yeah, and I think he played a decent, he only played 30 games last year, but I think a good chunk of them came towards the end.
Yeah.
So I think maybe he came back from it, but I'd have to investigate how confident I am in that.
Yeah, and his better years, of course, were with the Clippers at that time, and it was working out. He did miss some shots, of course, too, there, but we know him for his shooting. You talking about
shooting. He's also not
him.
helping the size
or the rebounding
problem.
Yeah, that's just more of that specialist that we talk about. And acquiring. Going to the super chats here, Marcus Blackstock checking in. Pending the Paul George signing, who would you like to fill out the bench and 2 other starting spots with? And we just talked about that. Marcus, thank you. Appreciate it, where we laid out a lot of those names that we just threw out there. So hopefully you heard those. Wonder if any of those interest you. Appreciate it for you checking in and asking that question, though. So Kelly Oubre of one of your own players, and then we just laid out a number of different other players that maybe has some interest.
One thing, and I love saying this name, Fart Factor 17. Not entirely sure what it meant, but he is bringing up Isaiah Joe as a possibility. My understanding is they declined Isaiah Joe's option so they can get him on a long-term contract while they have cap space.
His and Aaron Wiggins as well.
Yeah. So they can use that basically to get him on a descending salary where 3 years from now he's making significantly less than he currently is. Basically front-loading the salary. I don't think he's a realistic option.
By the way, if they could somehow steal Aaron Wiggins.
Sorry, Mr. Fart.
I did have him on the list.
That'd be a guy I'd have a lot of interest in. I think that's one where they declined it, and that was one of those
language tweets.
Yes, it was absolutely he'd be a great depth guy.
Mm-hmm.
Shot the ball well both of the last 2 years on low volume, admittedly, but a good rotational 2-3 type. So somebody I would keep an eye on if for some reason the Thunder are not able to come to an agreement on him.
Shahid checking in, super chat, a working back. I think we're talking about one DeAnthony Melton is important in a swing man and beach chairs as well. So there you go. And beach chairs.
I love a beach chair with a working back. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, nice, relaxing. Just to carry.
I don't think there aren't many things that I would prefer a non-working back.
We didn't get to our right before the bell a Melton prediction. If you had to guess, is he back?
I don't think anybody offers him anything significant because
I'll tell you what, some of
the back.
Reporting has been wild around it. There's been all over the place.
I just don't see anybody taking that gamble on a big number. And what would that number look like? Let's say it is 1 year. Is he taking that $8 million? Is he taking part of that $12 million?
I've said before, I don't think you can give him more than a minimum.
So I think he's back then.
And again, people brought up because I wanted Drummond on a minimum. I love DeAnthony Melton as a person, as a player when he's healthy. But it all comes down to the fact that you only have so many salary slots. And not only do I not love using one on a backup center if I'm not confident can play on playoffs, I certainly don't love using one on somebody who I'm not confident their back will hold up throughout the course of the season. It's the same reasoning, different reasons why I wouldn't trust Melton, but the same reasoning why I would not do it.
Every time my phone vibrates, I'm like,
yeah, it's panic every time.
Our buddy Rick Sachs, he won the Julius Erving basketball on Wednesday night as part of the raffle, joining us at the show at Garage Fishtown. Do you think a Julius Erving signed basketball and a number 1 pick gets us Atlanta Bogdanovich? I don't think Landry Fields is going for that. I don't think so.
But I don't know if I'd go.
I don't know what Landry Fields is doing right now, quite frankly. So it's a what is he cooking type situation.
It might cost you a little bit more than the basketball, though, and the number 1 pick.
I would assume they'll keep a pretty high bar.
Yeah.
It's part of why.
What are your thoughts on that trade? We weren't here.
DeJounte?
DeJounte Murray to New Orleans for Larry Nance, Dyson Daniels, and 2 firsts.
I think recouping 2 firsts is pretty good, considering how depressed of an asset he is. I don't love it. I don't think I hate it, though. They need to move on.
I didn't really love it for either team.
Yeah, no, I agree
so
with that.
the problem for Atlanta is the picks that they gave up to San Antonio are completely unprotected, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
And so there's still real downside risk for them. I would assume that'd be a motivating factor to, among others, to keep Trey, right? Like there's been smoke out there that they might trade both because they don't control their future if they bottom out. My guess is they still try to build the best possible team around Trae Young. So didn't love it, but understood it because they just needed to move on. That was an experiment that didn't really work for Murray and Young. For New Orleans, I think it's a trade that is in need of another trade to put all the pieces into place. I do not like, as I think I said it early on this now 3-hour show, that the Murray, Zion, Ingram triumvirate I think has too much overlap, and they're all in need of other guys who fill in the blanks. And they have some blank fillers, right? Like Trey Murphy is a guy I really like as a floor spacing, potential high volume 3-point shooter. I think part of the reason you trade Brandon Ingram potentially this summer is to get him more minutes. But until that happens, it's like, this kind of feels like an Island of Misfit Toys team to me.
I look at the New Orleans side and I go 2 players because you mentioned the Ingram piece. Number 1, the Ingram part is because I do think, like you and Derek, that they want to get Trey Murphy on the floor. They're probably going to extend him, so they're going to want to make sure they reap the benefits of that. Then if I look at their starting lineup, if they do that and trade Ingram, whatever they get back, I don't know what that is, but it's Murray and Jones in the backcourt, Murphy at the wing position, and then they're going to need somebody else there on the floor with Zion at the 5. Where does CJ McCollum fit in that? I don't know. I really don't. When I look at that lineup, he does not fit with that lineup because they're not going to start Murphy at the 4.
Yeah,
they're going to have now Herb Jones.
Herb, I think, can slide up and down the lineup. Like
he
I think
can
he's
slide
got
up,
enough versatility.
But his is more 1 through 3, not 1 through 4. Defensively,
maybe I think in the way the league has gone, I think he could defend. Honestly, one of their other big problems, Devon, is that what are they doing at center?
No, that's what I'm saying.
That's a huge
at the
variable.
5 to be named later, but I don't know who that is. So that CJ McCollum piece is I'm curious. I am curious, and he makes a lot of money. He's the president. Also the president of Players Association. So trade him if you will, and see what happens from there.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt they traded for Murray to go into next season with Messi as your starting center.
Yeah,
right? Like that doesn't seem super realistic. Though
I don't know.
I've said on the show, I think part of the desire to build around Zion is from time to time, not all the time, from time to time, you want to play some gadget Zion at center lineups, and so you don't want to invest at center, but you can't underinvest either. It's a tricky situation.
Yeah, and as far as the Pelicans go, we had Jason say CJ is going to start next to Murray, and Murphy will come off the bench. Could be. We'll see. I'm curious, though, with CJ McCollum. Joe says in the super chat, let me see, any reality and does it even make sense in getting Paul George and then getting Ingram or DeRozan?
Ingram's too much money.
Can't do it.
Yep.
DeRozan would depend all on, what is he willing to take to come here. It does seem like he should have.
And does he see a better spot in LA if a spot is created?
Yeah, he should have a decent market and presumably places where he'll have a more prominent role offensively, which I do think matters to him, right? Like he's a guy who's better with the ball in his hands and wants the ball in his hands. So I don't know that he would love here.
Fair.
And I don't think that's like an indictment of him in any way.
Devon, a.k.a. Schoolboy Beats, George and Oubre. They are both CAA clients. So is Gary Harris and Luke Kennard, who we just brought up, both of those two players.
Well, I do think the Sixers are a little more agent agnostic than the New York Knicks.
And I was going to say, there's
example.
a lot of CAA clients, so, you know.
Yeah. But good call. Appreciate it. Devon. Ryan says, we still love you, Batum, even if you don't come back. He ingratiated himself pretty well with the Sixer fans, especially after that one game where they could not score and he went off. What was that, the play-in game?
Was the play-in game.
That was the play-in game where he hit about 7 threes in the game and he was rebounding, offensive rebound, tip dunk. He was doing everything in that game against Miami. So, yeah, I think he left a pretty good impression with the Philadelphia 76er fans. I think so.
I can tell you just as a guy, really good dude to just, hang out, talk with, independent of all the basketball stuff. But we talked about his skill set on here all the time, how good it was.
For a role player who was here for 5 months, he probably ingratiated himself about as well as you could.
Through entry passes that were on target
Fucking
and
wild,
on time.
man.
What a concept. That's a big loss if Kelly Iko's report ends up being true.
Yeah. Final super chat for now. JM, thinking back to a year ago when the Harden drama started up, do you think this, where we are now, is exactly what Daryl envisioned?
Exactly?
No.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I would say that would have been pretty difficult to predict.
Yeah. I don't think most people would have predicted Paul George would be available. No, I mean, certainly I'm going to preserve my cap space so I can be, pounce if something comes my way. I think that was his selling point the entire time. By the way, a lot of people killed him for it, especially when the Bridges trade happened. They're like, well, maybe we should have had some tradable contracts. Maybe this, maybe that. I think this was always his plan, was that he could use his cap space to his advantage. But specifically Paul George, no, I think that would be giving, Daryl's ability to predict the future a little too much credit.
What do you mean? Daryl doesn't have a crystal ball he looks into every night, and
He is not a precog.
not a Ouija board type of guy.
As far as Andre Drummond's contract, Keith Pompey from the Inquirer.com is saying that the second year of the 2-year deal
It's player option.
is a player option.
Yeah, I believe that was reported previously. If I remember
I missed that one,
correctly.
and I apologize.
Well, I mean, listen, it's been fast and furious. We're also
Look,
3+ hours.
I
into
miss half the time when you're speaking. So the fact that you missed a tweet or two,
Yeah,
that's
you
fine.
would talk for 2 minutes, and then Derek and I would be like,
What?
Who are you talking about? So I'm certainly not getting on you for not remembering that a player option for Andre Drummond was reported however long ago at this point.
Yeah, well, right now, man, it's all quiet again. We haven't rung the bell in quite a bit. Things have kind of slowed down again.
It's too quiet.
It's too quiet.
That's why we're probably close to wrapping up here and living to fight another day. But I would bet money.
It's going to happen as I'm driving home.
Air,
Yes.
phone's going to vibrate. Paul George has decided to sign with the Sixers. So I don't know. I'm hesitant. I'm spooked. Actually, you know what? The funny thing, for years, the only time the Sixers would do anything, whether that's trades, waiving somebody, is either when I was asleep or in the shower. They never did it at a time that was, actually they traded James Harden when I was asleep and my phone was on do not disturb one night. So you don't get many good nights of sleep until everything is locked into place.
Well, I mean, 6:01, 6 o'clock period, whatever. Thought some things was going to be happening, but it seemed like it was last couple of years. Remember when they signed Al Horford and Tobias Harris?
When we all knew
Jimmy
tampering
Butler's
happened, and we
traded.
just said, yeah, that's real.
Yeah, that was Mike Super Chat. Can you use Melton's bird rights after going above the cap at a low risk minimum reward?
No. In theory, yes. In practice, no, because Melton has a massive cap hold. I forget exactly what it is. I think somewhere in the $15 million range. In order to have the cap space you want, you have to renounce that cap hold. When you renounce the cap hold, you lose his bird rights. So you cannot, use that loophole to your advantage. It's crossed off the list when you renounce the bird rights.
All right.
So do we feel, based on what's happened so far, do you feel any team that's been impacted should be nervous yet?
Any team that's been impacted should be nervous yet.
Like Denver, for example.
Oh, yeah. No, look.
They don't really
Again,
have mechanisms to replace
The
KCP.
reason you have the calculator on this show is because this apron and second apron is very, very, very important. You're seeing that with the Clippers and Paul George. You're seeing that with the Nuggets and KCP. It is going to be very, very tough to keep dynasties in place. This is not the era where you can have the Warriors during the Kevin Durant era. You probably can't even have the Warriors of the pre-Kevin Durant era. It's very, very tough. So yeah, those two teams absolutely are nervous. But they should have been nervous coming in. They knew this was coming. That's why Denver rostered, how many rookies Denver rostered last year? A couple, because they were hoping one of them popped and they could
Christian
replace these
Brown,
players.
they're hoping can step into that role.
And this is where Daryl is eventually going to have to keep a draft pick or two, try to actually roster them and develop them, because it is going to get, you're going to struggle to have depth if you have multiple stars. And I don't even mean stars like Paul George. I mean, like, Denver has 4 high-priced contracts. Some people wouldn't consider Aaron Gordon a star or Michael Porter Jr. a star. They're high-priced. Having high-priced players like that, it gets tough. And you're seeing that the last 2 years with Denver.
So obviously the Celtics and Nuggets don't care that much having won these titles. The Celtics are going to run into some roadblocks ahead with, Derek White's extension is going to be a big one. He's a huge name to keep an eye on in the next year or so, what happens with him. Now, they've done a pretty good job at some of these guys, not giving them, certainly not discount deals, but not top of market deals for somebody like a Drew Holiday. So we'll see what Derek White's big priority is when his contract is up. But yeah, the second apron fear around the league, as we've said many times, is real.
I will say, because I think when we came into the show, in our heart of hearts, were we hoping Paul George would sign while we were on? Of course. It'd be great for the show. Great for our numbers, great to talk about, great for content, great all around. I don't think we really expected it to happen. I think we always felt this would go deep into the night, possibly in the morning. So am I disappointed it didn't happen? Yes. But I think the main takeaway is I am more confident than I've ever been about Paul George being a Sixer. And I don't want to say it's a matter of when, not if, but it is a matter of I would be surprised if it didn't happen. And I think that's a great place to be in, considering what I expected.
And guys, like I said, when the calculator says that, he's feeling confident.
He's already crunched those numbers in his head, man. So if that's 85%, the calculation is there already. The calculator feels good. All right.
Should we call it for now?
I think we call it for now because
I think we got to do everyone a service because we know it's going to happen right when we leave. So
yeah.
For you guys, we're going to end the show.
If there is a big move tonight, more specifically, if there's a big Paul George move, we will return. Yeah, as long as
we will be back.
As long as it's not like 3 a.m.
Yeah,
I think it's fair to say you guys will see us again. But there's nothing happening right now. There's nothing to really. We've talked for 3 straight hours about guys like Luke Cornett getting signed. So I believe that's about it for us. Yeah,
that is about it for us. So, folks, As Kyle said, we will be back whenever something happens. We appreciate everybody sticking out with us because this has been fun. This has been...
And while we still have all these people here, if you have not, and I'm sure there are many new faces in here today, hit the subscribe button. And if you hit the bell icon, you will get notifications when we go live. So if we go live later, you will know. You'll get that pop up on your phone. You can go right to the show.
See all you MFers at 4 a.m., baby.
Exactly. So I do want to thank a bunch of you today. This is the most ridiculous roll call ever, but I'm going to try. From Marty Bones to Eugene Ross to Aaron to Christopher Chambers, Winona, Al, the 2-minute warning, CJ Jones, Remo K, Michael Belfatti, Aaron Widman, Sean Ford, Prophet One, Jay Bart, Anana Muss, Kevin Ridd, Jay the Jungle, Martin Casa, Kyle Wright.
According to Woj, Paul George's agent, Aaron Mintz of CAA, and the Clippers president, Lawrence Frank, had a conversation a short time ago that resulted in no new movement on a deal and an acknowledgement by both that George is unlikely to return to the Clippers.
Well, Daryl Morey is somewhere in Los Angeles right now being like, don't get off the phone.
This is our equivalent of there's somebody's going to be writing in blood on the walls behind me. GEO-RGE. It's red rum. You can all see it. The writing is on the wall. It's happening.
You're not leaving the room until we get a deal done.
All I had to do was say we're going to be done, and now Woj is ruining my life.
Continue the roll call.
I love you, Woj.
And it's raining again.
You know that oh, yeah. Well, maybe we do have to stick around for a little bit. Here, I'm going to keep doing shout-outs and will it into existence.
At least we have
Bai Chi, Haidar, Money Marv, Prophet One, Jason S., Seth Auerbach, Brandon Katz, Noah Lex.
What up, Brandon?
Carter Boy Fresh, Cannoli.
Holy cannoli.
Oh, my goodness. Holy cannoli is right. Jason S. Bree, who are our super chatters today? I see Matt Gallagher, Habib215. Davon, a.k.a. Schoolboy Beats, Ryan Z, JM, Mike, Bill, Cameron Erland, Joe, Ash Monroe,
up, Ash?
Chris Evans, Rocco Luciano, Rick Sachs, Shahid, Marcus Blackstock, Real Time with Prince Blue, Ampu Mines, Damon, Cannoli, Richard Fitzwell, Vincent Pellegrini, the man with the plan, Philly 007, Daniel Salusi,
what up, Dan?
Jacob Jones, Jingleheimer Smith, UK Birds Fan 01, MBD DBF,
Citizen X,
Dylan D, Nick D 4818, Lego My Ego, Brian Pumper.
This is good work.
Derek's walking off the set.
Uh-oh.
All
right, well, maybe
we are not leaving just yet. Derek is on the phone.
Roll call. We appreciate Bree.
Derek is on the phone.
Jaden helped out here as well, so we thank Jaden, but we're not going anywhere right now. Yeah, we're not going anywhere right now as I'm looking at highlights of Kalia Copper and Caitlin Clark battling. So, yeah.
Are you messing?
Right.
You son of a... Woj with another follow-up, by the way. The Clippers exit leaves the Sixers as strong front runners to land Paul George. They have not met yet. So,
Paul George, will you just come on, man? I mean, what else do you have to do?
Thank you to everyone.
Orlando's out.
Absolutely everyone who's here. Orlando's out. The Clippers aren't moving. Daryl Morey, put that damn contract on the table and let us all get some sleep tonight. Thank you to all. There are people here from Australia and England and Iceland and all over the world to hang out with us. And we appreciate that. We'll appreciate you again if you come back later when presumably Paul George signs with the Philadelphia 76ers. For now, we are the PHLY Sixers show. This is Devon Givens with the bell. That's Derek, the calculator,
That's not
Bodner.
for an update.
Bree, super producer Bree, behind the glass. I'm Kyle Neubeck. We will see you later. Goodbye.
We don't know what time.
Yeah,
We all silly like the mayor.